This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, I have 5:30. I'm going to go ahead and call this work session to order. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Dreer?
Present.
Counselor Urban?
Here.
Counselor Fleck?
Here.
Counselor Merriday?
Here.
Counselor Savage?
Here.
Counselor Stennett?
Here.
Mayor Soulsby?
Here. All right. Item 3, work session consultant interviews.
So your first interview is at 5:45, but they are here. So if you want to have any discussion, if you want to do anything before that, you can, or since they are here, you could have them start. So it's up to you.
Did you guys have anything that you wanted to discuss before we get started?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
So just in general, are we taking turns with different questions, or do we have a format in mind? Or? Yes.
Councilor Merriday, if I could talk to and speaking directly into the microphone so that Councilor Stennett can hear.
Yes, I was just wondering if we'd had a time to think over how we should proceed about taking turns to ask questions, or if we had like free for all, or was there any plan put forward or suggested?
Councilor Urban.
I received, and thank you, Mayor, no memo on structured order of the questions. So my anticipation was that we would probably just hear the presentation and then ask questions. And then when we convene afterward, we can fine tune our process.
Councilor Fleck.
So typically when we do interviews, I mean, obviously it's a little different process than appointing somebody to the planning commission, but usually we like to have the same set of questions asked every candidate so that we're getting an apples to apples comparison. Without that, I know things that I looked at were the price, not just the amount, but what are the other expenses. I looked at how long that was going to take. I looked at, what was their history and record that they gave us, brochure samples, and then just other criteria about, my general feeling as a whole. So I plan on focusing kind of in those areas unless something else comes up.
Anyone else?
I did notice that one of the packages or one of the proposals did contain a community interaction where they requested input from community and stakeholders, and I did not notice that on the others. So that was one thing I was kind of interested in, being able to ask if there's a possibility for that from each candidate, and if so, what additional cost would be there.
So I guess we can go ahead and get started.
Okay. Our first proposals are here. LCOG's Local Government Personnel Service. Yes, there we go. They're here, and so feel free to come up and give your presentation.
Test, test. Can everybody hear me? Great, thank you. We're not often on this side of the spectrum, so thank you for allowing us space and time to share with you in this really, really important recruitment for your team. My name is Stacy Marple. I am the LGPS, Local Government Personnel Services Program Manager. That is an entity within Lane Council of Governments. I hope you're all taking notes because there is a quiz regarding acronyms at the end of this presentation. I'm here with Howard Schuessler. He is an HR consultant that's worked with Lane Council of Governments as well as many other entities and comes with a plethora of HR consultation experience, serving in a variety of roles for us as well as other county and public organizations. So again, thank you. We understand that recruitment is time intensive. It's controversial, it's intense, It's disheartening sometimes, and it's also exhilarating. You have this amazing task at hand. We are here to support you through that task. We are here to take on some of those elements that are less fun, that take some time and energy away from the important things you're doing as a council, mayor, from your role. So we are really excited to be able to partner with you on this. Howard will share some of his strategies. He would serve as the lead facilitator for this recruitment, and he's here to share some of his strategies regarding that. And then we look forward to answering any questions you have regarding our processes, our support systems, standards, procedures, and so forth. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, councilors, city staff. I won't necessarily go through all the steps of a standard process for recruitment because everybody more or less has to do every recruitment this somewhat the same way. I think the difference piece for us would be that we would identify what your requirements are up front. And I would do that through individual interviews. And I would typically do the individual interviews with counselors, but we can include other stakeholders, key city staff, whatever council would direct. And the idea is you pull together all of the information from the interviews, something called a cognitive map. And it's something I've used for years for strategic planning. It's a powerful tool where we get individual input, we put it together in one place, and then through a facilitated discussion, we will identify exactly what your interests are. What are you looking for? And it's a perfect fit for executive recruitments. We would facilitate that conversation with council. We would create that prioritized criteria. And it's really the foundation, I believe, for a successful recruitment. There are a lot of different ways for you to describe the most talented or qualified candidate, but you don't necessarily want to go out and find a unicorn that's not going to work for you or who's not really going to work for you. You want to get the perfect person for your interests. And if you have any questions later, I can provide you some great examples of where agencies hired a superstar that did not work out. So the idea is to find the superstar that's going to work for you. We would use that prioritized list, of course, to develop targeted recruitment announcements. LCOG staff would screen applicants and present recommendations for interviews to you, and you would pick then who do you want to interview. I believe our process to develop that prioritized set of qualifications or desired candidate qualities combined with that initial screening process is kind of a key advantage to working with LCOG. And I would say it's sort of the alchemy that LCOG brings to this. I think probably everybody has their own specialty. That process, that getting that idea of your requirements up front, I think that really is what makes our approach somewhat special. Additionally, LCOG, as a local government agency, we're not competing with anyone. We're not trying to make money. Our only interest is in providing service to our members. And we have a long experience working with the city. And then, we would help identify, the interview process, which would be whether it's you doing interviews or you having interviews with council, interviews with staff, interviews with key stakeholders from the community. That is entirely up to you. So we would work with you to develop that part of the process, which I've done differently many times. And then we can also support background checks, reference checks, criminal history checks, credit checks, social media searches, all of that sort of thing so that you don't have to do any of that. And then facilitating council decision-making discussions. I think that could be either me or Stacy or our executive director, Brenda, who has, I'd say, world-class experience in working with elected boards and councils to have that conversation, especially if it's a tough one. So.
How are we doing on time?
Probably got about 2 minutes. 1 minute left.
Okay, well, let's open it up to questions. That's really our strength, is hearing from you and seeing what your thoughts are. We heard a little bit subject area come out, but what are your direct questions for Howard?
Counselor Irvin.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for being here, presenting. Sure appreciate the local knowledge and intimate, relations with the city through the years. A couple of questions. Traditionally there's a high turnover rate in the city manager position. And the other outfits that we're looking at tonight have referenced the guarantee. And I noticed that was lacking from your guys' proposal. Can you speak to that? And then on a similar point, do you have a service agreement that outlines, what we would be getting, how long the process, goes within the parameters of the agreed upon provision of service? And is that something that can be provided for us for review?
Thank you, Counselor, for bringing that up. I did notice that in the other proposals as well. Right now, that's not part of our package, right? But what we do offer is constant and consistent, regular communication with our team and with our liaison with the city, right? So sometimes we will work with a whole council, sometimes we work with the mayor, sometimes there's a representative. And what we do is weekly updates to stay abreast of what's happening with that recruitment and if there needs to be any adjustments made. So we don't at this time offer a guarantee, but we really want to be flexible and adjust as we move through the process to make sure we truly are assessing and evaluating and providing you appropriate candidates.
I might be able to add to that I think that process I described of identifying your interests very specifically up front, we put in that extra time so that we're listening to each of you. We're working with you as a group to identify what you're looking for. As a result, once you go through that interview process, it's more likely than not that you will have somebody who will certainly make it the 2 to 3 years that ICMA recommends as a kind of a professional standard for someone being here. I think you are more likely to hire someone who is going to fit your interests and be successful in the position with what we do. And the thing to remember is we're a government agency. We are simply covering our costs. What we're offering to do is based on recovering our costs to do the work. We're just like the city. You can't afford ventures where you're going to lose money. So being able to offer something later on, we assume that we will always be professional and provide a high quality service. I think we've always had that assumption at the so that we should hit it each time. And I don't know that we've had in any of the recruitments we've done where someone did not make it for that 2 to 3 year period as a minimum.
To answer your second question about service agreement, so that is one of the benefits of working with us is we have a simple IGA intergovernmental agreement process. It's a document that our team authors and creates. It goes through some internal approvals in-house all the way through to our executive director and through some attorneys. And then it gets routed to the appropriate signer on your team. And it, of course, states various items in there regarding timeline, invoicing, and so forth.
Counselor Flack.
So I'll be honest, I understand it's just an intergovernmental agreement, but there's a lot missing from your guys' proposal compared to some of the others. And as an example, and I will start by saying I love your cost controls piece, which was something that turned me off of another one where everything was talking about additional expenses. So I really appreciate that. But, I don't see anything, and I was looking in the timeline about what you're going to do to advertise this position. Where is it going to be advertised? I don't see any brochures that, illustrate how you guys are going to advertise. And you only list, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of throwing them all at you here. You list 3 references. I assume that you've served many, many more over time. Can you give us some understanding of kind of an average or maybe a total over what period of time of folks that you've actually helped. And that's kind of it. Thank you.
Okay, I think I noted them all, but go
Sure.
ahead and check me if I missed something. So, because we're government, we are really, really focused on efficiency. That is really important to us. We believe in our mission, which is to work side by side and collaborate with all of you to save money. It's definitely a goal of mine consistently. They get pretty frustrated with me at work when I'm checking each invoice intimately to make sure that every dollar is accounted for. It's really important. It's a goal of ours to be efficient. So we did not include a lot of our samples. We can provide those. We do have samples from Toledo and Union, which are the most recent ones, regarding flyers, job postings, and so forth. I'm reluctant to share our sourcing list because there's some unique places that we like to post. And so I didn't want to be forthcoming with that. I did look at some of the other proposals and where they post, and those are some great options. We have some unique areas where we post positions, which is a strategy of ours to really look at what are transferable skills for this position and where could we find those transferable skills? What are some creative outlets? And we have a list of those. I was reluctant to share publicly some of those. When we got closer to that, we would be open to, of course, getting your approval on all of those. References. I don't have data for you right now. We certainly could get you some data. Those were just kind of the most current ones we've done. And we've gone through a lot of revamping and rebranding some of our services. And so those were the most modern ones I could provide you at this stage.
And if I could ask, oh, go ahead.
References, you want to talk about previous?
Not really, again, because we're a government agency, I don't know that we approach things looking for, collecting a list of references. We serve a variety of government agencies, traditionally in Lane County, but over the last 4 years, I think it's been statewide.
Okay, thank you. And one final question is, just lost my brain, I'm sorry. Additional costs. So all of the others talk about additional costs as in, and I'm trying to get that apples to apples comparison. They listed expenses for having to fly candidates or transport folks out here. And I guess I'm assuming those would also be additional expenses. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm getting a very accurate depiction of what we're looking at.
Yeah, so that is something we would do in the intake with you. So we do, as Howard mentioned, a pretty extensive intake. So part of that, right, is talking to each of you to uncover kind of what you see and what's working for you and where you'd like to see this position. And part of that then is talking about certain technical aspects as well, whether it's, are there relocation fees? How many people do we want to bring out and what budget do we have for that? So there's direct expenses and then there's our fees. And most of that is coupled together in our estimate. We would be forthcoming with you if we felt something was going to be more expansive or more costly than we presumed.
So just for clarification, you think that 13.5 would cover all of that?
You had mentioned flying candidates out.
Right.
Not that.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Councilor Merida.
You probably are aware we're a very divided community at present. We have several counselors under threat of recall. I noticed that in one proposal there was a very extensive community interaction piece where they were consulting with members of the community about what they would see in a city manager, what they would value in a city manager. If you were to add those components in to your proposal, where we would have some public meetings, also meeting with stakeholders, what additional costs would you think that would add to your fees?
I don't think there'd be any additional cost for that. I think that we would assume that process involved would be up to you and your direction. So for instance, when we worked with Oak Ridge, there was extensive citizen involvement. When I was involved with the county administrator I, I was not the recruiter. I was the HR director at the time at the county, interim HR director, but I was the person who coordinated inside of the county. We built in lots of citizen interaction because the community was somewhat divided and suspicious of county government at that time. So I think that it would be assumed that once you direct who you want involved, how much stakeholder involvement, how much staff involvement, we can design interviews, we can design meet and greets, we can do all sorts of things, surveys, whatever you'd want to do, but surveys would be a little challenging for a recruitment process, but meet and greets and interview processes or facilitated discussion groups, however you wanted to do that, I think that's part of the assumed process.
Thank you.
Councilor Irvin.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that's part of the impetus behind the question about a service agreement or an intergovernmental agreement, because I can perceive a future where we would say, hey, maybe we need to take 6 weeks in that process, in the community outreach process potentially. My question would be, okay, at what point do we spill over the services for the quoted amount? And so that we can compare, where are the boundaries? Can you speak more to that? Here's kind of the extent of what is included in this quote, but if you want to go beyond that as you find necessary, then we go into an hourly rate, or like how do you manage that?
I think the city manager is aware that working with LCOG in general, when we come up close to the kind of the not to exceed amount in an IGA, we sit down and have extensive conversations before we proceed. We would talk about it before we would reach that point where we hit our not to exceed, to say we are approaching this because of some changes that occurred in the process. And we would have those conversations to make sure there was a comfort level of doing that, or to figure out what is the next step. And that's a normal part of how we would hopefully do business. Hopefully there have not been, I know we have an IT contract with the city, for instance. Hopefully there aren't a lot of surprises in there. When we're starting to approach it, we would all know well in advance that we were approaching that and have that conversation. Again, our only purpose to exist is to support members and to support other government agencies. So we live with the same budget rules and laws that the city does, and we're all aware of how that works.
We would work with you to prioritize where are we at, what do we need to do next, and strategize. Our proposal is a best case scenario. Sometimes it works out beautiful and we make no changes to that. And sometimes there's adjustments that need to be made due to the nature of competition, the nature of the season. It just depends. But this is our best case scenario. It's worked for us in the past. We hope it will work for this one as well. And if it doesn't, or we're feeling that we are edging towards a do not exceed, as Howard mentioned, we're talking about it. We're having that discussion, and we're prioritizing and strategizing what do we need to do next.
So, Howard? So how many years experience do you have in recruitment? You're the lead.
Well, I probably have 6 or 7 years, if I include my time working HR types of things with Lane County. I was the assistant director of public works there, so I was responsible for all the high level recruitments in that department. I was the acting or interim HR director and was responsible for county administrator recruitment and IT director and HR director recruitments there. And then with Lane Council of Governments, multiple city manager and public work director recruitments. I know I gave her a quick list, but I couldn't quite remember all of them. But I'd say probably maybe it's 8 or 9 years of experience doing pretty significant recruitments.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, well, we really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, everybody. We appreciate your time and your service to the community. Thank you.
Our next one is going to be logging on soon, and as soon as they log on, I'll let you know. They were the virtual one, the profit.
And the other two will be in person?
Yes,
Which Prothman is it?
just profit.
Just.
Son.
While we're just here, if I may, Mayor, it's interesting that, LCOG, thank you all so much for being the first ones to come today. They mentioned that the typical time frame for a city manager is 2 to 3 years.
It's 5 or 6, isn't it?
The 2 to 3 is actually what, for the Code of Ethics for ICMA, the International City County Management Association, that's what the Code of Ethics says, is that if you come to a municipality, you generally are not supposed to leave because of the expense of doing a recruitment and everything. You need to be there at least 2 years.
Oh, as a professional courtesy
it's
code of ethics standard.
Because there have been city managers in the past who have come on, and then they were also looking at other places, and 6 months into the job, oh, this other place gave me an extra $100,000 or $10,000, and that's where I really wanted to go, and they leave. And that's unethical, and you can get censored and removed from the association if you do that.
Thank you for clarifying that. I just think it underscores how fortunate we've been to have stability for so long. Because imagining doing this again in just a couple of years.
That's why it's important to do it right the first time, so you don't have to do it again.
Is there a kind of an average that's known?
Yeah,
Or?
the average is 5 to 7, typically, and it changes every once in a while. It goes up and down, but I think they're saying the average is getting a little longer, but it's still around that 7. There have been managers that have been let go after 6, which, if you hire somebody and then you let them go after 6 months, that's huge expense, and you're starting all over again. A lot of expenditure there. They may not log in for another 5-10 minutes.
I was going to say 6:15 is.
The number of years ago, it's been more than 27, 8 years ago, the city of Coos Bay hired a manager, a really good manager, had lots of experience in communities all over the place, and they let him go after 6 months. Started over again. He went on, and I believe he went on and was city manager in Salem. So, he was a great manager, just did not fit. So the real important piece is, do they fit in the community?
And then we have Oak Ridge, where the city manager is now the mayor.
We need the Jeopardy. Something to break up the silence here.
Back to the, talking about the timeline in the code of ethics, that almost makes it a moot point, the guarantee of the other proposers if I mean, not necessarily, but a little bit.
Unless you were letting go a city manager for cause,
Oh, this is true.
which would avoid severance and, not that I assume that happens very often.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's also an expensive process, right?
Right.
Because you have a severance package.
I can't imagine the job of a city manager. I work for a board of directors, and all of my board are aligned in one direction. And poor city managers have elected officials that may be all over the board. So that's got to be a very, very difficult job. My 2 cents. The term herding cats comes to mind. Actually, maybe peacocks sounds better.
We'll mix them up,
Herding
cats and
peacocks.
peacocks, and a few dogs and turtles in there too.
Giving the cats the information
There you go.
If they want to.
Enough treats are involved.
This is the process.
Should we take a break for a little bit?
That's what I was doing in my mind.
It's a mouse running around.
For some reason, the screensaver kicks on if we don't move the mouse over there.
Does the screensaver end up in the recording too?
No,
Oh,
it doesn't.
we see.
So this is the last,
Mine does
one of the
not.
last updates for Microsoft with them that started doing that. So,
I was going to say, I haven't noticed it, but I haven't used stars in a while. I have to make some index stamps on this when you post it to YouTube, because this is going to be pretty boring for folks.
Yeah.
Rewatch this.
Rewind it, watch it again.
How else do you get to sleep?
Ah, there she is. Okay, Sonia, you can unmute and turn your camera on.
There I am.
So we're asking the respondents to do a 5-minute presentation or so, describe and introduce yourself and your basic approach, and then I think the council has a bunch of questions for you.
Okay, awesome. Well, hello, good evening. I'm Sonia Prothman from the Prothman Company. Nice to meet all you and see all you there. Prothman's been doing business since 2002, so probably about 21 years. So we've been around the block a few times. We've learned a lot over the years on what to do and what not to do and what works and doesn't work. My staff has been together for 16 years. Steve, I think who would be your lead consultant, has been with me for 13 years. So we're all very, we work very well as a team. So you're getting a lot of years of experience with us. Although we're slowly moving with some of our sourcing products to a little bit further to the Midwest, probably 70% of our recruitments are in Washington and Oregon. So that's really where we focus and where we turn in our proposals for full recruitments. We don't try to go do full recruitments in the Midwest very often. So And Steve's also very, very familiar with Oregon. His son lives in the Bend area, and he's got grandbabies, so he's going down there all the time. So he does a good share of the Oregon. In the last 13 years, he always raises his hand when an Oregon one comes up and says, yes, please, because he loves Oregon. His son is down there, and he spends a lot of time down there. So we're very, very familiar with Oregon. And our process, believe you probably have seen our proposal. Probably the most important part of that proposal is, not the most important part, but number one are the stakeholder interviews. A lot of time in these interviews, you'll want to know what I know about Cottage Grove, but it's not really important what I know about Cottage Grove. It's more important that Steve, your lead consultant, knows about Cottage Grove. And so we put a good 2-week window up front to make sure that we're going to get in there and meet with everybody that, council, staff, whatever community, whatever you need us to meet with, so that Steve has a full understanding of your challenges and your opportunities and everything going on in there. And because fit's very important for your new manager. So, and the other most important part, a lot is about the outreach. As the baby boomers aren't applying, application counts are down. So we're getting more creative. We've got some staff working full time, pulling emails, pulling mailing lists, depending on the position. So emails are becoming a very important outreach, and we literally have staff that goes to every city, every county, and pulls all the employees, and keeping that up to date is a big job. So that's one of the things that we're really working on, and we're seeing that probably 40% of our applications are getting these personal emails from me announcing the job, and we send those out probably 3 times during a recruitment, and we ask that they send them out, and then we get people sharing them. And so that's been a very, very useful tool now in the outreach, as baby boomers are not applying for the jobs anymore. So that being said, you have my proposal. I'm here to answer your questions.
Councilor Flack.
Thank you so much for coming and presenting to the council. A couple of quick questions. Yeah, I'm looking at your list of Oregon clients. I'm not seeing a lot of municipal clients in your list. And I was just kind of wondering, is that just because you haven't put them in the list, or is that something that you typically focus on, different public entities?
That's just the 2023 recruitments this year. And Steve had a long trip out of the country for about a month. So a lot of the municipality ones that take 3-4 months, I haven't been replying to a lot. Right now we're doing the city of Madras. I'm not sure. I always pronounce that wrong. We're doing Hood River County. We're doing city managers in other areas. Steve's done lots and lots of city managers, and cities and counties are probably 80% of our work. But we are starting to see the utilities, 911 centers, fire, because the retirements are really starting to hit. So where typically for us government recruiters, it used to be probably 90% city county work, and now it's probably 60% city county work and 40% of the others that are struggling to find viable candidates.
Thank you.
Councilor Merriday.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. We have a very divided community at present. We have a potential recall for some of our counselors, and I was wondering what you could offer as far as community involvement in the process, so that people get their desires and interest, so that they feel it's really a community process for recruiting the manager, so we won't have this adversarial, hopefully, with the new city manager. And if so, what additional costs might that involve?
There wouldn't be any additional costs when Steve comes down to the stakeholders, whether he needs to stay 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. We're available to support that. we've seen that before. We've had, clients that have had to needed lots of community. We always suggest to do an open meeting, public meeting, and Steve would facilitate that so they can come in and say what they're looking for in their manager, and they can talk, and he'll facilitate that. That would be a public, whether sometimes we do two, sometimes we do one in the afternoon and then later in the evening for people who are working. We can suggest Survey Monkeys posted on your website is a good tool to use for those that there's questions that what are you looking for, what do you think we're doing right, those kind of things. So sometimes depending on how, I don't want to say bad it is, but how much community involvement you need, we've used those before. Steve can also, if there's if there's community coalitions or something, Steve can meet with the person who's the leader of that, or even, what we'll say is when we come in is that we want to meet with everybody that you want us to meet with, because it's ultimately your decision of who you hire at the end, and you want everybody to buy into it. So anybody that you need for us to talk to, even if it's just Steve doing a phone call or a Zoom, we support that, because that's one of the, I shouldn't have left that out in the beginning, but that's a very important part of your recruitment is the community buy-in, staff buy-in, your major stakeholders in your city. You want everybody to be a part of the process, especially the stakeholders gives them a chance to be a part up front, and then we can help design the final interview for how much community involvement you want at the very end too.
Thank you.
Councilor Urban.
Thank you, Mayor. Also, thank you for being here, Sonia. Can you speak to the background check process and the extent to which you go just as part of this proposal? And then just your general, not sense, but experience with the results of those, and how many, how effective those are for the recruitment process.
Yeah, well, we start out. We have a not a real thorough application process, but we have an application process. Many recruiters are just accepting resumes. We don't, because we figure that's a little bit part of the screening. We don't want to screen people out up front and make it too complicated of an application and ask too much. We don't want to ask driver's license references up front, because we don't want to screen anybody out up front. But we still have our application process, supplemental questions that we ask everybody to do. And in that way, we're getting typically more targeted candidates because they want this job, right? They're going to go through this application process versus, getting just resumes tossed at us. So that's a little bit of a screening, because they're going to be invested in the process to go through our process, and they're going to, all the documents that they have to answer is going to have to talk about their skills as managers. So right up front, they're going to be managers and have skills typically. I mean, not everybody who applies has the skills or the experience needed, and then once the applications are in, we when Steve reviews them and does the semifinal interviews, and within our application software, we say who moves forward. We hit a little button. The candidates get an email. My staff gets an email. We do full Googles, and that tells them these people are going to be interviewed within the next 5-6 days. So staff does full Google background checks, and we've been doing this for a long time. We go to all the cities they've worked in, all the cities they've lived in. We have tag words we put in, and if there's any findings at all, that maybe something's not on their application, we double check it to all of the information we've received. Then we'll ask them about that discrepancy, if there happens to be one, during the interview. So by the time that we come to you for the work session, we'll have done full Googles on them. Also within our software, we collect the applications, and we can go in, and when we candidate A has applied, throughout the last 12 years we've had our sophomore, if he's applied or she has applied for 3 jobs, it will show up, and we'll be able to, if they've been interviewed, we'll be able to see the notes, we'll be able to see their references, we'll be able to see all of that background information on them also. And if they haven't applied, it'll say this is the first time they've applied. So we have all that kind of background information on a lot of the candidates also. And then once we come forward, you have the work session. Steve discusses with you all their pros and cons, and you know, where they fit within your challenges, and you decide on who you want to move forward to a final interview. Then we do references. We ask for 9 or 12 references from past and present employers and staff. We used to go back like 3 or 4 jobs, but some people are in their jobs for 10 years, 12 years, and we are finding that that was a waste of time. So we don't go that far back in time anymore. But depending on, you know, how many jobs they've had in the last 5-8 years, we'll cover that. And then we also do the Sterling background check, which does the drivers, sex offender, criminal, those kind of checks through Sterling. That gets processed. And if anything comes up on those, then they'll be flagged for us, and you're provided all of that information. And so it's pretty thorough. And also, you know, I can't think of any time. I can't think of any time that you know, any of the candidates have come back and something's been found out afterwards that they had an issue in their background that we didn't catch. So I you know, for us, it's a process that we've learned how to do it over the years, because way back when, I don't know, 14, 15 years ago, we did have a recruitment, and the mayor up in, I think somewhere up in Alaska, found something about the person that he was named in a lawsuit against the city like 8 years ago, a different city, and he didn't put it on his application as a controversy, and so they felt that we didn't disclose this, and then they didn't hire the person, and they weren't happy with us. So, you know, lessons learned is why we do the process we do now, and it's been very thorough, and we haven't had anybody come back since that one 12, 14 years ago. There's been nothing that's come back and been exposed after, you know, that we didn't find.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that.
Counselor Stennett?
Yes, thank you, and thanks for being here. I think we've been kind of prepared as a group to expect this to kind of take a while. I think the duration of 6 months has been mentioned. You've got us here kind of finding somebody before Thanksgiving. I wonder if you can kind of address is that kind of the duration that it tends to take for you to find somebody? Is that, I mean, it seems, based on the information we have, it seems like an ambitious timeline. I was hoping you could kind of address how you make sure that happens.
Sure.
Thank you.
We find, yeah. We're starting to, it's not, back up. Just trying to say 3 things at once. That didn't work well, sorry. The holidays are coming, so it's almost impossible in December to get, after Thanksgiving, to get candidates with the travel and stuff. So we try to have our last final interviews by the first week of December. We've learned over the years that it just doesn't work, with all the vacations, the travel, the weather, getting candidates in. So the timing is perfect for yours, because each recruitment takes about 3 months. And then it takes about 6 to 8 weeks until the person actually starts. And so with a middle November final interview, then that's perfect for a beginning in January start date. Typical, we have a 5 or 6 week advertising window. We prefer 6. Sometimes cities and organizations want to go faster. We'll go down to a 4-week recruitment window, but we like to go 6-week recruitment window, because somebody who's happy in their job on week 2 might not be happy in their job on week 4, or something might change within their family, and a family member might be moving. There's so many things that can happen within 6 weeks. So you're getting a 3 months process. It's not ambitious. once they've applied, if they're applying, they may be applying to others. So you can't go too slow and stretch that out too much, because the good ones will get taken by other jobs. So so the 6 weeks, and once we hit that 6 weeks and we start to do the screening, we move very fast. We put 2 weeks in there to do the screening. It takes a while to screen all the applications and to set up all the interviews and to do the interviews and then get all the paperwork that you need to make a good judgment, all the application materials and all of our notes and stuff, and into your hands so we can come and have the meeting with you. And then once we have that meeting, we suggest no more than 3 weeks from that meeting that you have the final interviews. So no, it's not a aggressive by any means, and the draft schedule is there. It could be moved, it can be shortened. You might say, oh, we're all out of town, we need to move it all 2 weeks this way, or that way. So it's just a draft schedule. And if we've done 8-week advertising windows, it doesn't make that much of a difference. So long answer for a very short answer, that no, it's not a big aggressive schedule. It's pretty standard, 3-month process total.
I noticed that your project lead, Mr. Worthington, has been in city council for 12 years and is now currently serving as mayor in a city in Washington. Do you find that that's helpful in him with dealing with the finding a city administrator for the different cities and figuring out what is needed?
Oh yeah, sitting on your side of the desk is very helpful for a consultant to understand. Oh, there you all are. I believe it's very helpful. A lot of the skills that my consultants have, because they've all got their 30-year careers in city management for the most part, is facilitating councils. That's one of the hardest and things that we do, is to come in and facilitate the work sessions with you, the meetings, and especially the final interviews, and helping you once the interviews are done, spending hours with you if needed to go over all the candidates and facilitating that meeting, and getting you all on board. If it's a 6-1 choice, you still need to come out as a 7-0 choice, those kind of things. And so I think that it gives him a really well-rounded experience, especially also now being mayor. But I was elected city council, so way back when, and so I think it's very valuable to understand what it's like sitting on the other side of the desk, where you guys are sitting, and what's important to you versus what's important to staff, or everybody's coming in with a different view of what's important to you in this recruitment, whether it's your fire chief or your school district head of the school district. Everybody's looking for something different and something else. So it's very important, and Steve's very well-rounded and done a lot of these, and he's very good at what he does.
Are we on time?
We still have some time.
Okay. Any other questions?
5 minutes.
Okay. I think we're good. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me, and have a great evening. And good for you guys for bringing in if you make the final choice to bring in a recruitment firm. I'm sure you'll make the right choice, and you'll end up with a good manager. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Jensen.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to your presentation.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor and Council, for having us and letting us bid on this process. And I understand I've got 5 minutes, so I'm going to try and stay within that. And then I know you have questions in addition to that. So I'm Eric Jensen. I'm the principal and founder of Jensen Strategies. And we recognize that you've already read the proposal. And so I'm just going to use my time to kind of highlight where I think we may be different from the other firms. We also recognize that this is the most important decision that you can make as a city council. And so we take that quite seriously. Our process engages not only the council, but all of your stakeholders. So that includes your city management team, your city staff, as well as your community. Because we feel all of those entities need to have some input into who the next city manager is going to be. We're also sticklers for minimizing the city's liability. And what I mean by that is we follow Oregon law. We follow Oregon recruitment law, but we also follow Oregon public meeting law. And we want to make sure that we don't put you in a position where you can get second guessed about your process. We recognize that we recognize that we are the highest bid here by a long shot, by a big margin. And so if cost is your primary factor, we're not the firm for you. If you're looking for a firm that's going to engage all of your stakeholders, tailor the search to your specific needs for a city manager, and minimize the impact on your city staff during the process, and thoroughly vet your candidates, then we are the firm for you. So why the cost difference? Well, first of all, in our experience, we offer a process that's more in depth, more comprehensive, and more robust in our process. Some of the areas where we tend to dive a little bit deeper than our competitors as a rule. The first is a position profile. And the position profile is something that you really need to put into place legally, because in order for you to be able to hold executive sessions, you have to adopt a position profile and a hiring process officially as a council. And that profile has to have had input from the community. This is all under ORS 192.660. So we're sticklers about that. We want to make sure that you go through that process. And so to that end, we spend a lot of time up front really trying to learn about your community to put that profile together. We interview all of you individually, as well as your city management team. We do a survey of your city staff. We offer a survey to the community, and we hold a community meeting to hear what the community would like to see in the next city manager. The profile that we developed then is vetted with you folks in a work session to make sure that we got it right. And once that's done, it is a key document for us going forward. So it's a key document because we use it as a criteria for evaluating applications, for evaluating all the interviews, all the way through the process, because that document tells us what it is that you and your community is looking for in the next city manager. We also use it as foundation for the recruitment brochure that we put together. Another place that we find that we differ is we treat our candidates with dignity and respect. And what I mean by that is confidentiality, making sure the applications stay confidential up until the time that the candidates agree to go public. This is another reason that you want to be able to have an executive session to discuss the candidates, because you can't have a discussion about some of these candidates until they're willing to go public in a work session. So we make sure that we put that together for the executive session. We also keep them well informed of the process. I've been a city manager candidate myself, and I've been in processes where they don't tell us what's going on. We tell our candidates every step of the way where they stand. We give them information of what to expect in interviews, where to go, all that information, so they're not left in the dark, and they can concentrate on putting their best foot forward. So once the finalists are chosen, this is the place that we also find our firm to be more robust in terms of our process. Once they're chosen by you, we will do full criminal background checks. We also do credit checks. We also do education and employment verification. We also do reference checks, but in addition to doing your standard reference checks, we do what I refer to as off-the-grid checks. And that means we're using our network to further look into the background of the candidates that you're considering as finalists. So you'll get additional information besides just the traditional reference checks. Our finalist receptions and interview panels are very highly organized. We facilitate the finalist receptions with the community, with the staff. We do roundtable discussions where we rotate candidates. We also moderate and support all of the interview panels. And then finally, when it comes to the council deliberations, we will put together written summaries of all the information that we receive from the receptions, all the information we receive from the panels, and the references. And then we facilitate your deliberation. So, and we want you to make the most informed decision that you possibly can. So we put a lot of effort into this up front. You see the detail in our proposal. Our experience with our competitors is you won't see as much detail, so there's not the guarantee that they're doing the same. But everything that you see in our proposal is what we are committing to when we sign up. So I'm happy to delineate further on any of that or answer other questions. Thank you.
Councilor Urban.
I appreciate you being here, and thank you for coming, giving us that good recap, highlighting the areas of distinction. In your recruitment process, what do you find to be the top 3 motivating factors for the candidates you're working with in terms of where they wind up?
A lot of it depends on where they are in their career. Are they just starting out? Are they looking to move from a smaller city to a larger city? Are they a department head that's looking for their first opportunity to be a city manager? That's one factor. Geography is also a factor. Some people like to work in large urban areas. Other people like to be in small communities, and that's a factor as well. Compensation, definitely a factor, but definitely not the sole factor that candidates tend to look at. But I would say the other thing that is really important is the council. What happens when we take on a process is I start getting phone calls from candidates, and they'll say, tell me about the council. Does the council get along? Tell me about the community. Is there a lot of division, conflict? Because the candidates want to make sure they're walking into a situation where they can be successful. And they want to understand that they're going to be working with a council that's going to work with them, and that they are going to be in a place where they can really make a difference. So those would be the things.
Councilor Mary Day.
That gives an excellent lead into my question that I've asked each of the candidates so far.
Okay.
We have a very divided community right now, and some of our council is facing a recall election, possibly. I was particularly impressed when I read through your proposal at the amount of involvement that you bring the community into and the depth that you extract from the community what their desires are and qualities they would like to see in a manager. I think that would be crucial in our case now when we're at this crossroads, and was very touched by that and impressed. We also have a financial consideration because our community is also very conscious of how we're spending our money. So, but again, I was very impressed by the level that you would involve the community in the process.
Thank you. Do you want me to speak more to that? Or?
If you would, please.
Sure. So understanding the community and where the community is coming from is key in this process. And we want to make sure that whatever comes out of that position profile is something that is reflective of what the community, staff, and council would like, collectively speaking. In terms of attracting candidates, look, I don't think that candidates are so much thinking that community conflict is a deal killer. That's part and parcel of the position. You need to be able to navigate that as a city manager. And the good, strong candidates that we have understand that. And so when we get to the profile and we start looking at that and we look at things like some of the dynamics that you had going here, it'll be important to be transparent about that in the process so that they understand what they're getting into. We're not going to blow smoke and mirrors for the candidates, and we're not going to blow smoke and mirrors for you. So we want to be transparent about that because that's the way you're going to get the best person possible, is they understand what they're walking into.
Yeah, it's my fear that someone would look at the situation and say, oh, no thanks.
Well, frankly, Counselor, if they do, they're not the right candidate for you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? We're good. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And I have a leave behind piece I'll hand to Richard. There's more than enough there, so I wasn't sure who all would like to get a copy, but I'll leave that behind with you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And your last proposal is here as well, so if you're ready, I did it.
Welcome.
Thank you.
You can start whenever you're ready.
Very good. Thank you, Mayor, council members. I appreciate this opportunity. I'm Bob Larson with GMP Consultants, and I want to thank you again for the opportunity to submit our proposal and present it to you. With me is a colleague, Kate Hansen. She's instrumental to our success at GMP, and she'll be, if you have any questions about schedules or coordination issues, she can happy to answer those as well. I want to stress that we currently have 3 city manager, city administrator searches going on in Oregon. Canby, Hepner, and John Day, as well as 4 senior department level searches that we've conducted for Ashland and St. Helens. We're well versed in Oregon at this moment, and we've had those searches in play as well. Within the last 6 months, those were. We're also well positioned regionally and nationally to recruit for this position. We've got other recruitments going on in Minnesota. We've had some in Montana, as well as Utah, and then Washington State. GMP is owned by Greg Prothman, and we've conducted with this company over 500 recruitments. It's a process that applies best practices. We strive to identify the quality candidates that you're looking for that are a good fit for your organization as well as your community. We've got 11 professionals, including 9 recruiters, and these folks are all either former city managers or senior staff that have been with in executive positions at other organizations. And we've got, they're all, we currently have 10 recruitments going on in the last 6 months for city managers throughout the Pacific Northwest as well as the Midwest area. Why GMP? We have a service that is high quality, personable. We've built the relationships throughout our collective networks. We have solutions that are tailored to each individual organization. We think we strive for people first. We want to ensure you and your candidates that have a great experience. Our project team, again, I mentioned Greg Prothman. He's the owner and principal. He's got 20 plus years of direct experience in various local government positions. He has 25 years in the public sector recruitment business, and he's hired quality recruiters and staff to our team. Kate Hansen is our recruitment coordinator. She's a certified project professional manager. She's an incredible talent with phenomenal attention to detail, creativity, and critical thinking. And I can attest to that because I've been with her the last year and a half, and she's done remarkable work for us. We also have Sarah Marsh. She's a person who's in charge of our recruitment brochures. We put together a tailor-made profile on the candidate that you folks are looking for. We worked closely with you. She has unparalleled skill in researching and highlighting your community's and organization's special attributes and creates a customized position profile for that. And then there's Bob Larson, who I am. I got 35 years of local government management experience. I have a strong network throughout the Pacific Northwest region, including Oregon and across the Midwest. I'm the lead consultant for the Canby City Administrator recruitment at this time that's currently underway. And I'd be delighted and honored to assist you and support you in your search for your next city manager. I'm going to go over a little bit of our proposal too, so you have a little bit more background on this. We have a work plan and approach for collecting data and information, as well as recruitment profile development. We review and finalize the search process and schedule directly with you folks. If we're hired, we'll be back here. I can expect I'll be here in person, and perhaps Kate will be with me. But we want to come down here and talk to you folks directly, find out who you want to have as on your team. Sometimes we would recommend and advocate for some senior staff to be involved, as well as obviously the mayor and council. We also ask for obviously a direct line of communication with the council. That's invariably one of your senior staff members. We develop, review, and approve a detailed recruitment profile and invitation with you folks. We also have strategic marketing. We have targeted recruitments. We develop advertising and place ads in websites, job boards, periodicals, and targeted ad placement. And that's really up to our client, which would be you folks again. We want to make sure that you're well aware of where you'd like to recruit. If you want to stay in the Pacific Northwest, obviously we'll do that, and we'll concentrate heavily on that. If it's a search like a city manager, we would perhaps recommend a little bit broader search, at least 11 western states, perhaps the Midwest, so we can identify and obviously follow through with finding the best possible candidates for you folks to interview and eventually hire someone. We also have a development of a candidate database for direct mail invitations. We will mail out approximately 700 to 900 letters of invitation to city managers and administrators, as well as others throughout the Pacific Northwest, including the Midwest. And again, if you folks are, if you're interested in more than just finding someone who's got more than just city manager experience, we could also look at potentially senior department head level folks as well that might fit the profile. We then candidate screen and shortlist for presentation to you. We obviously collect the candidates' cover letter, the application, the resume, they answer supplemental questions, and that's designed to measure their writing and thinking skills, and obviously they also submit 5 professional references. We then would screen those, and then we would help you folks select and interview the semifinalists. We would attempt to find 8 to 12 of the most promising candidates, and then we would conduct 1-hour interviews with them, and then we'd write up a written observation on those, present those to the mayor and council, and then go forward from there. You'd end up ultimately selecting the folks you would like, the candidates you would like to interview. We obviously would have a work session to conduct that. We'd be back here again in person to talk to you about how we'd like to go about doing this. We'd send you all that information on the candidates as well. And then the final interviews and selection process. We design and prepare for final interviews. We help you decide on the structure that you would like, the schedule that you would like, including the panel participants that you would like to have, as well as facilitators. We'll tailor that process to your needs and prepare all the candidate materials for the interviews. We also do reference background checks. We want to assure you that any candidates we bring to you have been thoroughly researched, knowing that they have, excuse me. We want to find out, obviously, about who their supervisors were, who their subordinates were, and their peers. And we also include education verification and the usual criminal history, driving records, so on and so forth. Then the final interview and the selection process, the mayor and council, any advisory panels that you would like to use would interview the finalists. We facilitate a debriefing with all the panel participants, and after the debrief, I'll facilitate the evaluation process and help mayor and council come to a consensus, discuss the next steps, and organize any additional candidate referencing or research that you need or want. After that, we would facilitate, if you have a selected candidate, we would prepare a potential contract element for the mayor and city council to review. Once your top candidate has been selected, we'll assist with that as well, with the job offer, contract negotiations, as well as the employment agreement. Our professional fee, $18,500. This covers all the consultant and staff time required to conduct this assessment and recruitment. And you have the right to cancel at any time that you feel is necessary, if necessary. We feel obviously we've been very successful. We have not had any cancellations of any of our recruitments, but that's still an option for you, the mayor and council, to decide. We also have a guarantee and a warranty. It's in our proposal, but I want to point that out, that if the selected candidate should leave your employment within the first 12 months of employment, we'll conduct one additional recruitment for the cost of expenses only, if requested to do so within the 6 months of that employee's departure. If the major elements of the process are followed and a candidate is not chosen for some reason, we will again repeat the recruitment once with no additional professional fee. The only cost to you would be the expenses involved with that. And I also want to mention on a personal note, why do I want to do this contract? Why would I want to have this contract? Why would I want to work for you folks? Well, I want to help place an outstanding candidate who's a good fit for the mayor and council, the staff, the organization, and the community. I also want to develop mayor and council a solid professional working relationship. And I've done this obviously in the last several months, over a year and a half that I've been with GMP. I'm also a former Washington city administrator, as well as in Minnesota. And I've been the former president of the Washington City Management Association. And I want to continue to support the profession, the city manager's profession, and ensure that I see colleagues competing for this job who I think are fit for the job, and for your organization as well as your community. I'll stand for questions at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Councilor Irvin.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for being here, both of you.
Welcome.
You were addressing the stakeholder process of deriving what's important. And I noted that you didn't mention the community aspect of that. Can you speak to your process in community engagement and what you find to be effective?
Yes, I just finished with Canby, and if I could refer to that one, I think it's a similar community in that it's obviously in Oregon, but it's got similar attributes, I believe, from what I understood from what I researched on your community in Cottage Grove. But we would recommend that you would again get to select these, but we would recommend that you have me, interview some of your senior staff, if you have that opportunity to let all the department heads at least engage and talk about what the key attributes would be of the candidate, some of the cultural things that are going on with the community as well as the organization. And then we'd also invite or want to invite, obviously at your pleasure, I would think committee, board, commission chairs who represent the community, as well as I'll call community stakeholders. And there's quite a few of these. I don't want to miss anyone, but I'm looking at folks like, for instance, the school superintendent, if you have a utilities group, for instance, if you've got a fire district, if you've got anyone else out there who are folks who are contributing to the community, who are leaders in the community, I would prefer that we could invite them as well to interview, or at least answer some questions. I can't get to all of them sometimes because they just don't have time in the 2 or 3 weeks that we want to develop the profile. But we would sit down with you at what I call a kickoff meeting, and then we would talk about who you would like to have involved in the process. You might just want to have mayor and council strictly. I've seen that a few times, but not generally. You want to give others an opportunity because it's obviously going to be someone who's going to be leading the organization, can be a leader in the community, and it's very important that you give others the opportunity to participate in that. Right, for instance, in Canby, we, along with the mayor and council, there were 38 people who were asked to, were invited to participate in that initial profile development. And it worked out quite well. We just launched that, or we'll be launching that search recruitment tomorrow. So.
Councilor Merryday.
I would like to continue with that inquiry because we would like to, we're in a very divided state in our community currently, and there's a possibility of a recall for some of our councilors. So I would be more in tune. Of course, we want to talk to stakeholders, but also just community members, and wondering if there's some community process where members of the community could make their desires known and their input given, and to also meet the final candidates and interview them as well, or do a meet and greet. And would that involve additional cost to your proposal?
I'll start with that last piece. I understand no, it would not cost you additional to have that. I do apologize for not including that. There is a community process involved at what I'll call just before the mayor and council would be interviewing the candidates. It would be an open house that we recommend. You invite all the community to come out and obviously talk to the candidates. We'd ask the candidates to do a 3 or 4 minute presentation on themselves, so it'd be obviously the folks can understand who they are, at least if they're going to meet them for the first time. But going back before that, we can certainly hold what could be a community. I wouldn't want to call it a stakeholders meeting, but it would be a community meeting. We could have
a listening session.
Sure, I'd be delighted to come down and do that. In fact, I would really entertain that. I have not done that before. Not typical for us to do that, but we certainly can. There's no reason why we shouldn't do that. If that's what if the mayor and council desire that, we'd be delighted to help out and do that. I think it'd be a great idea, actually.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? No. Thank you so much for your time. Very informative.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you. Yeah. Take a little break. So we'll go ahead and adjourn and take a little break.
We'll recess.
Recess.
I guess if a motion is made to that. I think it's. We discussed for making a selection during that. So I think it's a possibility if we, that's all the information we needed.
I don't know if that's still, but it's no, just if we just answer some questions. Yeah. Do you have it, sir? Yeah, why don't you go print it off, and then you can give it to everybody too. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, it's, there's no.
He was wondering about his son interviews.
So it is something to be said. For sure.
Should be good discussion on all the processes. Good thing we had interviews.
Yeah, no, I'm glad we have it. Because it totally changed
Volume start.
from having just not open.
Yeah, that's what he said.
And you don't go because you're here.
Oh, so they were told.
Yeah. All the, I got messages through.
Were you talking to people, the hiring bodies that hired them to do it, or did you talk to any of the actual candidates?
The mayor of Seaside.
Oh, okay.
It's actually pretty negligible in the long run when you think about it.
So he was saying them too. He was saying, so, I was in Hood River, I met their new city manager, and that was the first problem. She was out of Portland, she was an assistant city manager. Boy, she was like super enthusiastic. Seemed like she had her stuff together. It was really, yeah. I just got here.
Have you tried
Sorry.
Tom? And they have some unique stuff there too that I haven't seen in the room. Not everybody will probably get into it, but they have pork bone tacos. So it's like homemade pork bone.
Yeah.
It is surprisingly
Yeah.
delicious and good texture. And they have good salsa too. I think they beat Victory's salsa by a significant margin.
That's pretty amazing.
It's so
Great.
if you're going south on the freeway, get off the 74, and head towards AutoZone, Walmart. There's that chevron on the side there. It's the red.
See, man, I was just telling Greg. Immediately, I wrote them off, and then, but I figured that they would be good.
Always get your coffee bean on top.
This week, I kind of went. I started going, yeah, but how do you know? How do you know? I mean, you can say, but it's, I think that's something that you might want to
getting good food.
really, I don't know, I think maybe he's
maybe they're moving with picture.
This is a presentation from Teresa.
Yeah.
Someone from
okay.
Carrie Clark coming.
Chris?
Just so we can discuss a little further, and then maybe call, like get our favorites, and then call them. And, okay. Oh, okay. I have so much paperwork. Oh my goodness.
Oh, I like that. Zoomed in view, Richard. Yeah, now you zoomed it back.
Yeah, no, it came back, it's been back for what,
I don't know. He was going to try, so we'll see. Yeah. We'll see if he makes it.
We're not getting the same numbers of votes. So we must have been surveying folks that are now.
Is that open to people beyond the residents?
If that's a significant population, that's what. So, yeah, big.
Is there a laundry facility in that too, or is it just showers?
No, just showers. We're actually talking about putting a washer there just to wash the towels. It's cheating. Plus,
They're over behind where it's
they lost their.
Really, it's pretty cool when you can actually move the cameras. Yeah. You can move it here.
Clicked on the move the city give money to renovate that building.
We did get those. Yes, we did a couple years or two ago.
Yeah, you can do the other one too, but it takes too long. You can zoom in, move it around the council. By the time you got there, somebody else will be there. Somebody else will retire. People get sick watching.
That's the target that I.
Must be missing. They were in a building and got sold.
They purchased the old Emerald Valley Craftsman. And so they lost this place. So now
The eagle has landed in Japan.
What's there in the meantime?
that other building.
About 30 minutes. $50 to get to her apartment, and mommy would feel better. $50 from San Fran to her apartment. She said she's northwest San Francisco, and then the airport is in the south part, so.
For some of the DC. I didn't know where I was doing, so I flew into Dallas. It was $50.
And that's back then,
So
right?
yeah, back then, I even had my business. And I finally figured out, hey, just fly into Reagan and get on the metro. $1.25, you're at Rotel.
It's been a tough.
Yeah. Kinsey takes transit pretty much as well. She didn't take her car to San Francisco this time, so she thought it was I said, how's your flight? She said, uneventful, we just go.
San Francisco, as you know, is probably the worst airport to get out.
Yeah, she left an hour delay. I'm sure it was small.
I think he's going to be a good fit. He's really passionate about it.
Ironically, we watched a movie last night. We watched a movie.
That was a gap.
I thought I heard a name that a little overboard on the coffee, right?
I had a cup myself.
I thought we were going to go Super Bowl. You don't know?
No.
I just thought maybe one of these variations might be.
You waiting on me? I don't see Chancellor Stinnett anyways.
He's still there, so he'll come on when you get started. Here he goes.
So we'll go ahead and bring the work session back in order for discussion.
Just the regular meeting now, because we have the agenda item.
All right. Oh, okay. I'll call this meeting to order. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Dreer?
Present.
Counselor Urban?
Here.
Counselor Fleck?
Here.
Counselor Merity?
Here.
Counselor Savage?
Here.
Counselor Stinnett?
Here.
Mayor Soulsby?
Here. I'll rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Items to be added to the agenda, I see none. Appearance of interested citizens for items not on the agenda. This is a time for citizen comment on items not listed on the agenda for a maximum of 30 minutes. Individual speakers must be recognized by the presiding officer, provide their name and address, and will be allowed up to 5 minutes or less with the council approval. Comments regarding any matter scheduled for a public hearing may be provided only in that hearing. Comments on agenda items may be taken prior to council discussion on that item. The council will not engage in any discussion or make any decisions based on public comment at this time. However, the council may take comments under advisement for discussion and action at a further council meeting. Okay. So, I guess we will go straight to Bruce Kelsch.
Bruce Couch, 78340 Halderman Road in Cottage Grove. Really, this is an opportunity to say thank you to the council and the mayor for all the work you're putting in and going to be putting in search for a new city manager. Having done a lot of recruitment myself over the years, I know how much homework you have to do and how much homework you will have and how important your final decision is. And I know that the time you put in and invest in the community will certainly pay off. Also want to thank Chief Jeff Groth for being an interim police chief for the time that he's been here and the impact he's had on the community. Thank Richard Myers for his time as city manager, because I know he's got some time left, but as you are in between positions, Richard's still here and you're about to do the search. It's an interesting time for him as well. So just to express some appreciation, thank you very much for all your work.
Thank you. Okay, we don't have anyone else listed for items not on the agenda. So we'll go ahead and go down to consent agenda.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion with a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Sorry, there's just a typo. If we can clarify on the August 11th, 2023 agenda session minutes, concerns from council, item D. It says that I had mentioned we can meet Nancy. It's Nancy Nathanson at Town Hall in Eugene on Saturday. So the name is corrected to Nancy and Eugene on Saturday. And that's all. Thanks.
So, Madam Mayor, I will move to amend my motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
I'll amend my second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? All righty. Resolutions and ordinances. Item A resolution adopting standards and guidelines for the review of applications for the multi-unit property tax exemption program. Staff report by Mr. Mongan.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. At its June 26, 2023 regular meeting, the City Council adopted Ordinance 3173, which amended Chapter 3.10 of the Cottage Grove Municipal Code, specifically the MUPTI program. The adopted changes to the program included additional provisions to encourage the development of regulated affordable housing, and changes to the design elements section of that code. As a measure to ensure that staff prepared recommendations as part of their report to council, the June 26 code amendment proposal and adoption included the addition of the attached standards and guidelines document in draft form, which would be adopted by resolution. At this time, staff has put together that document for consideration by council. If the proposed document is determined to be ready for adoption by council, staff has included the draft resolution for council's consideration. There was one comment that was asked for or made on Friday morning's agenda session in the standards and guidelines document, and I believe it is in section 6 or just below section 6 in the guidelines area, and that pertains to the affordable housing chart, or the AMI chart. You'll see in the copy that was presented to you this evening, a highlighted portion. That additional sentence there will allow staff to regularly update those tables based on updates provided by Lane County through the Human Services Division. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take them, but staff does recommend approval.
Councilor Fleck.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So will you be able to derive the property limits from the AMI? Because the county just has the AMI based on household size. So will you be able to derive the other chart numbers from that?
Yes, Mayor, Councilor Fleck. So the limits table, or the rents based on actual income limits, the top one is based on a third of that lower table.
Okay.
Income.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Savage.
Thank you, Mayor Solsby. Just to clarify, what is highlighted here makes it so that whenever the AMI is updated, you can make that change without having to come to City Council. Is that correct? Thanks.
Yes.
Councilor Mary Day.
Thank you, Mayor. Planner Mongan, I just want to compliment your diligence in putting up with all my shenanigans on this, but I've finally gotten to a place where I think I can live with this document and are very, very satisfied with it. And I appreciate my colleagues on the council for really attempting to make a viable option for some affordable housing through the MUPT as a real public benefit. So thank you.
Ms. Roberts, do we have an ordinance number?
2112.
2112. Councilor Flack.
Madam Mayor, move that the council adopt resolution 2112.
Second.
We have a motion with a second.
Did you have a comment? Did you have somebody signed up for comments on that?
Yes, we do. Thank you. We do have a comment. Mr. Kelch. Thank you, Mr. Mongan.
Bruce Kelch, 78340 Halderman Road. And as you might expect, as you are poised on the threshold of approving a MUPT, to not forget the LRPT, the low-income rental property tax exemption, so we encourage that as well. I also wanted to share with you a conversation I had with a friend last week. It was about economic development in Cottage Grove and what can bring good paying jobs and an industry or a company or something to Cottage Grove to improve the economy here, which has always been a long-standing issue ever since the change in the timber industry. And one of the hurdles we both saw was housing. You know, you can have something here, but then where are people going to live? And if people end up commuting from Eugene, you lose the benefit of having people in residence here that spend their money locally and are part of the community and provide all the energy and commitment that goes in with living in the same, working in the same community. So as you look at these different ways of encouraging housing, I applaud you and I encourage you to keep also looking at how this can tie into economic development with our community because it's such a key issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Urban.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to clarify that I'll be voting yes on this in that we are voting on adding clarity to the decision-making criteria for the assessment of the applications that come in. And I think that is helpful. I still don't believe that the MUPT is the mechanism to use primarily for establishing affordability. Certainly LRPT, certainly some of the other mechanisms that we talked about, and what we're doing over south of town are my preferred methods, but just wanted to clarify that as part of the vote.
Anyone else? Do we have
We do. We have a motion and a second.
Okay. All those in favor signify by, oh, I'm sorry. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Stennett?
Aye.
Counselor Dreer?
Aye.
Counselor Urban?
Aye.
Counselor Fleck?
Aye.
Counselor Savage?
Aye.
Counselor Merity?
Aye.
Mayor Solsby?
Aye. Motion carries. All right. Business from the City Council. Item A, selection of a consultant to assist with the city manager recruitment. Staff report by Mr. Myers.
You have just spent almost 2 hours sitting and listening to the various proposals from the consultants, and so now is your time to discuss as a council where you want to go from here.
Councilor Flack.
Well, I'm actually surprised and happy to say that my original choices remained the same throughout. I want to thank all of the folks who came to speak to us. I did get definitely some more insight into our candidates. I'll just kind of run through real quick. I have GMP as my number 1, LCOG as my number 2, Jensen Strategies as my number 3, and Prothman as my number 4. And some of the reasons, I will say GMP, I think, has The price is acceptable. As we heard from their comments, they're willing to adjust without incurring additional expenses. I think that their history, as they've shown in their documentation, is excellent. Timeline is good. Their brochures were awesome, and I really like their plan. And so that's, like I said, I really think that for me, they're the best. LCOG, I actually really was a little disappointed in their application at first and feel much better with their proposal after having talked with them. They talk about, monitoring expenses. They talked about doing public outreach. There are more references than just the 3 they listed, which I was certain of, but I'm encouraged to hear that they've done quite a bit of work. I think their timeline's a little fast. I wish I would have thought about asking that one. But that being said, I think that we're certainly can slow that process down if necessary. I have not seen their brochures, which is kind of a question mark, but they are from Lane County, so I think that their response will be good. Jensen, we did have some comment in our first round about, if the value was there, would it be worth spending the extra money? I do think that they are probably very diligent. I'm just not seeing the additional value for another $10,000, and that actually, and all throughout their process, talks about how it will cost more if things overrun. And so I will be honest, I just, I have a real hard time with that one. I almost moved it to the bottom just based on the price. But that one's it. I think Prothman's really good. The fact that they only showed one city manager in their list of proposals concern me about their experience in municipal recruitments. That being said, she said that they had done others. I thought her comments about trying to get in before Christmas were very, very good. Another reason I think that the Jensen proposal could potentially run quite long. And once again, I think the big thing for me was just the lack of a record of working for city manager recruitments. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak to that? Councilor Savage.
Thank you so much, Mayor Solsby. I'm going to echo a lot of what Councilor Fleck said. I had a different lineup, but I feel like I still stand by it given the presentations. Although I'm pleasantly surprised with Jensen. I had marked them as my lowest due to the price because I truly feel that the other folks are doing very similar behaviors for the same price. But he was so eloquent and spoke and articulated in a way that I really appreciate. So he actually bumped that up for me. But GMP was my number 1, and that's why I would really appreciate supporting.
Councilor Merryday.
I did some homework. I went down the reference list for Prothman, GMP, and Jensen Strategies and called or emailed as many of the references as I could. Unfortunately, I only had that brilliant idea this morning, so I didn't get as much return. I only got 1 reference each for Prothman and GMP, and they both kind of were saying, yeah, they did a good job for us, and kind of left it at that. When I called the references for Jensen, including Steve Wright, mayor of Seaside, Bob Drake, former city manager of Cornelius, and Michael Breeden, the mayor of Sisters, each one of those gave kind of a ringing endorsement of the Jensen Strategies Company. And I said, well, the main objection we have, or the main concern we have, is the price. Because I wrote them off immediately. I just said, whoa, those guys are way out of line. No way we could consider them. But when I talked to those references, they went into detail with enthusiasm about how well they served those communities and how the money spent was well spent. So I just wanted to bring that to the council. I didn't want to try to override any of you, but I found that to be very revealing in that interview. And as I stated in my questions, they are the only one that identified the community process out front. So whichever group we choose, I think we need to really make it clear that we need as much community input as possible in this process so that we get someone that's not coming in an adversarial relationship with the community from the get-go. That we really need to get as much input from the community towards finding the right fit for our community at this time.
Thank you. Councilor Irvin.
Thank you, Mayor. For me, it's between Jensen and LCOG for two different reasons. I think with LCOG, I like that they are a basically no margin kind of operation, but I also think that means that would work really well if we were able to coordinate and drive the effort and say, okay, we could direct them to do all the things that, say, Jensen does for probably far less money, but that would require us to do that. And, I think we're not paid positions up here that can just dedicate, half time to getting exactly what we want. And in the absence of that, I think that for the reason that Councilor Mary Day mentions as well, the strong input from the community, the understanding that that's super important. I did appreciate it seemed like they were used to dealing with a higher caliber candidate in general and understanding their concerns. Certainly when it comes to not wanting to reveal, their search in case it doesn't pan out and jeopardize or compromise their current positions. I think that's really important for a high level candidate, and that they would drive that entire process through the end. I do think that in the grand scheme of things, that if you can arrive at a long-term candidate, every year that they stay in the position just goes to the value of the selection process. And if they, through the testimonials, they demonstrate that, we absolutely got the best, then a $10,000 difference or 12 or whatever it might end up being, I think is worth it in the long run. To go with the best. So I would support Jensen, but I wouldn't write off LCOG, and I would offer them they sat in on all the interviews, and if they want to counter and can commit to the same level of service and offering, then there could be a tremendous value there. So those are my thoughts.
Councilor Dreher.
Thank you, Mayor. I thought this was an interesting process because just reading the proposals, my top two are GMP and Prothman. Hearing the presentations today, my top are Prothman and Jensen. Personally, I just can't stomach the price tag for Jensen, and with the a little bit of it's not clear, well, we want to do all these things but there's a little bit extra cost. And I really appreciate the eloquence of this presentation, and as well as the community process. So I think we have consensus. We need a head first community process about our position profile. All of the proposers are going to do that because we're going to ask them to do that. When I was reading the written proposals, it was clear, it's kind of all the same. It's the same service in general. It's how they're going to present it. But it also depends more on what candidates are out there looking at the time that we are looking to recruit. So I thought Prothman did a really good job today explaining the timeline and their process. I would have liked to meet the gentleman, Steve, that they mentioned would be working closely with us. And I thought Jensen was very, very impressive, but I just can't stomach that cost without further understanding, really what is the leverage point there.
Counselor Stennett, did you have some input?
Thank you. I think for me, GMP kind of rose to the top after this process. I think their presentation kind of left me with the fewest questions. I feel like the best sense of what they would deliver and what they couldn't have delivered. I appreciated their emphasis on their team and their qualifications and the importance of the connections between the team and the communities that they're serving. I didn't necessarily hear a justification for that much additional expense for Jensen. That said, I could be persuaded. I think if we decided as a group to spend the extra money, I don't think I would oppose that. I just didn't necessarily hear kind of a concrete deliverable of why they were that much more expensive. Those are kind of my top two. So, yeah.
Thank you. Going into this, my top one was Prothman, and then I had GMP right after. And they've actually switched places for me now, listening to their presentation. As far as Jensen goes, my issue would be, even with good recommendations when you call, that's kind of a hard thing to make it a comparable, because you really only are using one. And so it's just one person's enthusiasm over another, really. So that one was kind of tough for me. I do like how detailed they are, but it is a major price increase. And I do worry about anyone that says, but this is extra, this is extra. You know, that becomes a little touchy. I thought that GMP made a really great presentation. However, I do like the experience of the people that work at Prothman, that if you look at their background, they're long time with the company, where some of the others are newer with their employees, and their oldest, most experienced not oldest, but their most experienced workers a lot of times are subcontractors and not actual of the company. So I guess with that being said, my top pick would be GMP, with Prothman right behind it. So we have kind of a crazy all over the board, and what would the council like to do to see us move forward on this? Do we need a little more discussion and bring it back to council? Do we want to check on some of these? Councilor?
Well, I could be convinced to go another direction other than Jensen. I didn't have any issue with GMP. I think that we'd likely get the best result possible through Jensen, but I don't see an issue. I mean, we're still going to interview the candidates. We're still going to, make sure that we have a community-driven process. So, I'm not going to be a stick in the mud on that.
Does anyone else have some input on that? Councilor Savage.
Thank you so much. It sounds like, even with kind of the all over the place, that it feels like we're all leaning towards GMP. So I'd like to make a motion that we pick GMP and move forward.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion with a second. Any more discussion? Councilor Mary Day.
Just that we do in fact include a condition that we develop a robust community process, and we heard that there would be no additional cost, right? But that we hold them to that.
They definitely sounded interested in that. Councilor Irvin.
And in addition to that, it's important to me that there's recognition. We had similar things being spoken of, position profile. That was mentioned by GMP, specifically using those words. So I just want to clarify that that meets the ORS definition that allows us to have protect the identity of those that we're interviewing in the process before selection.
All right. We have a motion with a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right. That's good. All right. Item B, approval of Thornton Lane, Airport Road, Water Main Line Extension. Staff report by Mr. Fay Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Branch Engineering and City staff released a request for proposal to construct an 8-inch water main line approximately 500 feet in length in the existing utility easement north of the new St. Vincent de Paul reuse store currently under construction. The new water main line will provide water service for the reuse store, neighboring an undeveloped parcel, and the Cottage Grove Airport. Staff contracted with KPFF Engineering to design a new water main line to connect water service from the Arby's to the Thornton Lane Airport Road. We received 5 bid proposals. The low bidder was Windrose Excavation LLC. Their base bid was $32,640, and their alternative number 1 was $99,081.60, or alternative 2 was $88,459.2. To share that, the difference between the alternatives is the material used. Alternative 1 is a steel pipe, and alternative 2 is a plastic C900 pipe. It's what industry uses now. The reason for the 2 alternates was availability of materials. Since this bid has been out, the C900 material is available for the project, and if awarded by council, would be the lower price of the project. Pacific Excavation Inc. was second. H&J Construction Inc. was third. Wildish Construction Company was fourth, and Miley Construction was fifth. Branch Engineering has reviewed all bid packages and found all to be complete and responsive, apart from Miley Construction, who altered the units in section 230 schedule of the bid items in the proposal. Branch recommends that the contract be awarded to Windrose Excavation LLC in the amount of the base bid plus either alternative 1 for a total of $131,721.60, or base bid alternative 2, $121,099.20. As I stated, the material is available and could be awarded for alternative 2. So staff recommends to City Council by motion that they approve the City Thornton Lane Water Main Line Installation Project, awarding the bid to Windrose Excavation LLC with the base bid plus, I'm going to go ahead and say alternative 2's bid for a total of $121,099.20 using the 8-inch C900 potable water pipe, and authorize the city manager to issue payment upon completion.
Councillor Fleck.
Mayor, thank you. I was actually really surprised from our agenda session to hear that the plastic or whatever, the C900 pipe was actually more durable than the ductile iron. That actually surprised me, especially the fact that it's cheaper. So I really appreciate our conversation. And with that, I'll go ahead and move that the City Council approve the City Thornton Lane Water Mainline Installation Project, awarding the bid to Windrose Excavation LLC, base bid plus alternative 2 for $121,099.20 using 8-inch C900 potable water pipe, depending on availability of materials, and authorize the city manager to issue payment upon completion.
Second. We have a motion with a second. Any more discussion? Councillor Merryday.
The C900 is known as the Blue Brute, and it's the industry standard. It holds up very well over time and has less wear from the water passage, and it's potable.
Potable. Potato, potato. Sorry.
Right. We have a motion with a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion carries. Item C, quarterly homeless report, staff report by city manager, Mr. Myers.
So you have before you the quarterly report, and we've done some work on expanding the report a little bit, so we have an actual form for the different locations. You have your first form, that's the Highway 99 shelter site, with information about the demographics of who's there, and their different issues associated, how many have disabilities, those kind of things, and age breakdown as well. And some more data and information about services that are going on. In addition to that, we have the police report documenting the 3 calls that have been there, 1 ambulance call, and a suspicious condition. Apparently somebody was parked outside and watching the camp and looking suspicious, so they had somebody come for that. And then one where there was a wanted subject that they were trying to find and went to the site. Then we also have a report that we included on the designated camping sites, and surveys were done. They went out and tried to find out as much as they could about the different people that are living there. 35 of the individuals that were at the 2 sites were interviewed and surveyed as a result of this, and you have the information and data for that. Also included information on the homeless in Lane County, the homeless by name list information, and this is available on the webpage under. I think I have the address up there on the page, but you can access this and look at the different means and dates for information. One back in December of 21, when we basically started the discussion with Lane County's information in the front of the report, and then it going down to getting down to the Cottage Grove information, more specifically tied to us and what's going on in our community. In December of 21, there were 185 unhoused under the homeless by name list in Cottage Grove, while in Lane County there were 3,823. Then going to April of 22, that information as well, where Lane County was 3,900 and the number for Cottage Grove was 174. What they do with these numbers as well is the homeless by name list is constantly updated and adjusted based on what happens. So if somebody isn't coming in regularly or comes in and reports on a future site, a future report that, as they do a new front door assessment, that, oh, I wasn't here for the last 3 months and I did get a house and rented a place or moved off of being homeless, they can then go back and adjust those months previous to show that and show where they went. And you've got the entered into homelessness, those that entered onto the list from Lane County, as well as a report on those who exited the list, showing where they exited out to. Most of the time it's inactive, or we don't know the destination. Sometimes they move away, go back to family, go to another community, whatever. They pass away, and we don't have that information because they just don't get another front door assessment on that. So then we have May, June, and July. And the reason I give you May, June, and July is every year in July, everything zeroes out. They start over again, and that's a good thing. Then we're not carrying numbers that have disappeared, people that have left the system, and gives them a good chance to kind of zero that number out. So the number in July is a little low. It's currently for Cottage Grove 178. If you look at the May and June numbers, May's number was 229, I believe, and then June was 216. So July would probably be in that area somewhere, depending on how many of those people were actually out of the area when July came around and got off the list because they've been zeroing out and cleaning up. We'll see August's list go back up as well, the homeless by name list. You also have a report that we gave you tonight from Teresa. This is some of the individual work that we've been doing or that has happened in conjunction with us and Carry It Forward or HIV Alliance or the Occupied Medical that has been helping as well with some of the sites and doing interviews and visiting both locations, the designated camping sites as well as the shelter site. And so you've got specific information about individuals and how the projects and what we've been doing have impacted individuals and put them either in housing or gotten them to other services in other communities even that better meet their needs and help them get out of the situation of homelessness. So that's our report. Hopefully this information is more of what we're looking for and trying to put together. We will continue to refine some of the questions and data that we want to get from the services. One of the things we're looking at right now with the designated camping areas is we're trying to assess what we can do there to help monitor and maintain that facility and make it a little easier to manage as we're managing it, which is really not managing, but just kind of keep some supervision going. And doing a little more like what we did with the community center, where we actually create physical barriers to designate the campsites, the individual camp locations, so that we can have a better handle on keeping materials, keeping stuff in their locations. We have one individual, at least one, who has a mental issue, a mental health issue that is hoarding. And he's been removed from the 99 site because of that. His stuff is still there and they have to hold it for 90 days, but he has as much, if not more stuff in one of the designated camping sites. And because he has this issue and concern, he's currently working with a counselor to try to address his hoarding characteristics and mental issues that are associated with that. But we want to see if we can do something and induce and create a little more of a carrot and a stick to be able to provide a little more boundaries that we can actually create physical boundaries and provide that opportunity for him to address that illness as well as others who might be using the facilities. So any questions you have, Jake's here, Teresa's here as well, who can answer questions. They've been going out and visiting the sites and regularly contacting the individuals at the designated campsites. I've been working a little more with Chris as well, and we can also provide any information about the shower facility too. We don't have that report in here, but we do have some information about what's been going on with the showers, at the mobile showers as well. And they're currently located back at community sharing and operating on Wednesdays there.
Do we have any questions? Councillor Dreher.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, staff. I just want to thank you for this detailed overview. I think this paints just a little bit of a picture of a really complex issue. What stands out to me is the number of people who are experiencing homelessness in our community who are on Social Security. And I think about some of the conversations we've had, first of all, around affordability in general, even looking at our multi-unit property tax exemption, the chart on there about what's affordable based on how much you make. And Social Security payments it's really hard to make that stretch past, say, a place to live. Your food, what if you have, say, a flood insurance payment that goes up, all these unexpected things. And I think this paints a little bit more of a humanistic picture of the people in our community experiencing homelessness, which are our elders, and people who have disabilities. I appreciate Teresa's overview of some of the specific situations that people are dealing with. And in particular, we see, and then they're not with us anymore. Some of these individuals who had complex medical issues, but were not very old, and they're not with us anymore because living on the streets is hard and it takes a toll on you mentally and physically. And I appreciate the care that the staff take to, when we talk about people experiencing homelessness, it's shame-inducing enough to we live in America where we're taught pull yourself up by your bootstraps. We internalize if you're not experiencing success, you must be doing something wrong. So the people I've talked to who experience homelessness have such a sense of shame and very low self-esteem because they internalize what our community tells them. So I appreciate that. I don't hear those kind of negative sentiments further exacerbating what's already a very stressful, terrible situation for people experiencing homelessness. And I appreciate this level of detail.
Mr. Penn.
Thank you. Mayor and council, I just wanted to point out there is one error in the designated camping sites sheet. My fault, cut and paste error. The very bottom under local connections where it shows how many people are from Cottage Grove from within 50-mile radius and greater than 50 mile. Under unknown origin, that 0 should be a 2. I figure at some point somebody's going to notice that that doesn't add up to the number of surveys we did, and it's because I messed up on the typing.
Councilor Urban.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for putting these together and for providing these regular updates. It is helpful to have an assessment on the state of affairs. I think an element that Mr. Myers, you did touch on in some of the explanation for the homeless by name methodology would be helpful is to address the other type of counts that have been brought up from the origin of this conversation now so long ago. And for my clarity, as well as I'm sure for the clarity of the community, we have homeless by name, PIT, point in time count. You mentioned the student homeless count, and then there's a count that I don't recall the name that comes through the service providers when someone goes and accesses services at one of the designated sites. Can you talk to each of those, what the utility of each of those is, and then specifically why homeless by name is what is being presented in this context?
Yes, the PIT count, the point in time count is, the utility is simply, it's used by PUD. The number really isn't any good. It's a number that is generated by collecting volunteers to come out one night a year and find as many people that are living on the streets as they can. And it's way undercounted.
Could I jump in real quick? They've actually changed the methodology of that. So they're actually using the homeless by name list now and doing some outreach to try to catch folks out there and then adding any additional names. But it actually is virtually the same thing as the homeless by name list.
And that's a great example of what Lane County has done. And a lot of counties haven't moved to a homeless by name list yet, like Lane County has done. But trying to compare to that original PIT count or that we had back in 2021 of 48 or 40 something isn't a good number to compare to when we have a homeless by name list that was showing us 178. And so trying to stay consistent and keep the data sets the same. The McKinney-Vento numbers are school numbers. That's the name of the legislation from Congress that created the program for counting youth and school-age children that are homeless. And it's primarily school-age children is what they use for that. Has a little broader definition than the others. Couch surfing, staying with grandparents, those kind of things all fit into the categories. So it's a little bigger number. But it is just youth. It's not counting adults or other individuals in the community.
And if I may, is that number represented in the homeless by name at all, or are they mutually exclusive?
It's not included in the homeless by name list because it has a different definition. And so you wouldn't be able to see the McKinney-Vento number in the homeless by name list. So if, let's say, you have some children that are living with their grandparents, they're not unhoused, they're not homeless under the homeless by name list. They're housed and sheltered, living with a different guardian. But under McKinney-Vento, those would be counted as not living with their normal guardian.
Do we have access to those numbers that we could include in future reports just to track alongside?
We can get them from the school district, but the school district is the one that has those. Yeah. And then the other number, Councilor Fleck.
I was just going to say the other number that is just from service providers that happen to be in our area. To my knowledge, that's just Carry It Forward and community sharing. I will say, though, that that's a little skewed because our agency serves all of South Lane County. So we actually have folks all the way from Goshen down to the Douglas County line. We have folks from Lorain to Diston. And so our number represents folks that are coming to our agency. So it's not necessarily, and this is self-identified, so it doesn't necessarily meet the HUD definition. but it is, so that number is larger. I think the homeless by name list may not be as accurate as it could be, but it's more accurate than just the number of folks who are accessing services at the agency.
And so the importance is to try to pick one of those and use it all the way. And using the homeless by name number, list number is as good as we're going to get. I mean, unless we tattoo everybody and put a barcode on everyone and we track everyone wherever they go, everybody, that's not going to happen. They're people, they move around. The homeless by name list is the way to stick to. Mix and matching data from different data sources is not a way to really get a good accurate picture.
And do we know if the McKinney-Vento number is self-identified as well?
I would assume.
I think so. They pretty much all are. And so they use that for the subsidized lunch programs and the free lunch programs at the school. So people will turn in their information that way and develop that number, that process. Yeah.
So, Mr. Boone, can you give me an update on, I know it's in here, but just for everyone, how many people are at the 99 site? How many at the Douglas? How many at Main and 12?
So 99, pull back to that page. As of the beginning of the quarter, when they were doing this, it was 26, and by the end of the quarter, 31. We do not have numbers broken out for Douglas versus 12th, just because there's some flow back and forth, and it's a constant moving target. And we don't know the number of individuals that are staying there, because some of them we never see. If they're at work, at doctor's appointments, doing something else, when we go out there, we might not encounter them. And again, it's a moving target. Somebody could come in, at 2 a.m. on a Sunday, and we don't know it. Our best guess is that my best guess, which is worth probably less than you're paying for it, is maybe 60-ish between those two. That's just based on the ones we do know. We've been able to count. We've identified 35 with the surveys. We know there are some more that we didn't get. There were people that didn't want to do a survey. My gut is about 60, but that could be plus or minus 10 to 15 maybe. We don't have a good way of collecting that information yet, but we are working on trying to find some ways to make that more solid.
So we have no necessarily a way to really identify who is in our sites, no good system.
We would have to have somebody effectively stationed there 24/7, because legally, we've got to have this open. If somebody comes into town off the freeway and it's, 2 a.m, on a long weekend, they can go in there and camp, and there's nothing that requires them to send us a postcard or an email or call me on the phone or anything like that. So yeah, we don't have a tool for that. It would require, having somebody who is stationed at the site all the time, watching people go in and out, to be able to do that, which we, at this point, I don't think have the budget for, though that's really free to decide.
Is it possible to do something maybe on the honor system, just so, we can identify who's in there, just like a normal neighborhood, just for safety reasons? And is there, even like a campground, there's like sign up sheets for campsites, and I think that would be helpful, even, for medical purposes, if they need to go in there. It just seems.
So one of the potential outcomes from what we've been talking about with those, the community center-like shelter sites, is that then we would be able to tell people, okay, you've come to town, you can have one of these, but you have to tell us who you are, and you have to check in every so often so we know you're still here and you haven't left town and left your stuff here or something. So that is something that we're trying to maybe use this project to get a better better handle on who exactly is here, which tent is theirs. One of the issues is that under unreasonable search and seizure, we don't get to go into people's homes. And, if there's somebody in a tent, and they don't want to come out when we're going through and talk to us, we don't have a legal ability to open up their tent and make them talk to us without a warrant, which it's not a crime to not want to talk to us.
I understand that, but even for the fact that we know there's people in there that are using multiple sites, and that could fill up a space and make it not available to someone else that might need it. And so I just think it's only like common courtesy, and if you put it across to them in that manner, might be a good possibility to at least like downsize the site so that it's not, how many do we need? It's an issue.
The common courtesy will get us pretty far with a goodly number of the folks out there. We have some mental illness issues that common courtesy doesn't sort of enter into the calculus there, unfortunately. So yes, to a limited extent, we can do that and it will work, but it certainly won't be we won't be able to give you a hard and fast, this is 100% the numbers we have there under that regime, unfortunately.
Unless there's others. Thank you, Mayor. I don't recall the specifics of the plan, the multi-tiered plan. Can you give us a sense of where we're at in terms of capacity under this current? We have two additional sites. I thought there was a third one in level 1, whatever. Where's that third site? And then what's the capacity requirements before the expansion goes to beyond?
So the third site is right across the river here by the, I can't remember the name of it now, the park. Go across the river, turn left. It's right there on the river bank across from the high rise. Pioneer. That would be our next overflow site if we needed to open one. I don't think we need to open one yet. We have, we're going through a process of we're going to be tagging a number of the tents that are out there that we suspect are currently, well, we're going to tag all the tents because we can't be sure, but we suspect a number of them are no longer occupied. People have set them up and then left town. And again, because we can't go in and ask, is there someone actually here? What we have to do is effectively, we're going to have to tag all of them and say, hey, this site is going away in 72 hours. Unless you come tell us, hey, my name's Joe Blow, that's my tent, I actually live there. So that we can clean up some of the ones that are taking up space that don't need to be. We just have to go through the legal process to do
so
it.
There's a threshold of capacity, presumably, in these. What would that be for the Douglas site?
Douglas, I'm guessing, and again, this is a guess, probably about half full, really. It looks more full than that because of the extra tents, but I think as far as people are concerned, I think we're probably at about half capacity there. 12th Street is much closer to full. It probably only has
So how many campsites? Could you clarify?
We have 30 or 32 at 12th Street, and I think 34 or 36 at Douglas. I don't remember the exact number offhand.
And then similar to the capacity issue, I wanted to say are there 40 shelter units at the 99 site?
There's 33.
33.
One of them is kept open for ACT for mental patients or illness issues that come in. So they have that available for immediate emergency issues to be able to house them on there. The community sharing is working with, Carry Forward's working with them on that. The other sites are, the other shelters are occupied. One of them is closed off because it needs some repairs.
I'm sorry, Mr. Boone, I wasn't writing quick enough, but what did you say, Main and 12th at the capacity?
So
campsite capacity, Main and 12th?
So 30 or 32 at 12th.
There's 32.
32, thank you.
Okay. Huh. All right.
I believe Douglas was closer to 40 when they restriped it last, but sorry, Mayor, just to share that it's been a little bit difficult because the painted 10 by 10 squares have disappeared, so we got kind of a lot of free flow that was taking place. But I believe when they staff completed painting it. They had 40 10 by 10 campsites.
Councilor Fleck.
So I've been speaking with city manager and assistant city manager about the garbage, and especially in the 12th site. Actually, we looked at both of them this morning. Actually, the 12th site, while there are a lot of bicycles in one spot, is relatively clean, where the 12th street site is just, it's a sty. It's a pigsty. And I'm a little frustrated by that. I mentioned that a month or two ago, that if I had that garbage in my front yard, our nuisance folks would come by and tag my place. So I guess while I want us to be an open and welcoming community, I really expect our residents to, keep their sites clean. And so to that end, I like your idea of actually a physical separation. I think that anything outside of a tent per se should be considered garbage and made it well known to the folks that are in that site, and that should be enforced regularly. I mean, I hate to do that. Part of my motivation for this model was not to overload our public works folks, but at the same time, I don't think it's in the residents' best interest to be living with this garbage. And so I really am frustrated. I get the community's frustration. I totally do. It's rough, seeing, folks that are, and as Councilor Dreer mentioned, self-esteem is a real challenge. And this is something that can lead, and mental health issues lead to this, problem. And so to the extent we're able under the law, which is horrible, by the way, this law does not allow us to throw folks out for bad behaviors. I think we need to lobby our legislators in Salem, that House Bill 3115 needs to be changed. Until somebody reaches felony level transgressions, we can do nothing about it. And that's a problem.
And with our created boundaries and everything, one of the things that we do is that would have the rule that anything outside of those boundaries is going to be considered garbage. And we'd be able to get rid of it and not have to do the notice and the storage and all the other stuff that we'd have to do. So that's one of the pluses. We're working with Carry It Forward to see if we can find some money, and we're looking at other opportunities to see if there's any grant funding or money that we can try to put together to move towards that direction and create the structure with the cubicles in it that would provide us that opportunity. So.
Well, and in a perfect world, I think if we had funds, which obviously we do not, and I'm a little frustrated with our governor, I want to say that publicly. I appreciate the effort, but the plan is horrible. That's just my 2 cents worth, Madam Governor. But if we were able to have opportunity village style model in these places where in those cases, Square One Villages add support, but it's a self-governed organization where the folks hold themselves accountable. I don't think we have the funds for that, much less continuing our current shelter without a change from the state. So I do think that we need to be lobbying hard with the state for many of these issues, funding, changing the rules around folks who have behavioral problems, actually having places for folks with behavioral challenges to go. And I will commend the county. They are working on opening a behavioral unit here in next year after. Do you know?
2025.
So anyway, that's my 2 cents worth. So I just want to echo that I share frustrations, and if there are better solutions, I'm always open to those. But I'm just not seeing opportunities at this point. So let's put our heads together.
Councilor Stennett, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I had a couple questions, if I may. First is a two-parter. Can you address kind of generally the police contacts at the designated sites? Is there a typical pattern to those kind of calls? I get the EMS calls as well. I was also curious if, do we know of anyone that with direct ties to the camping sites that have been involved in police contacts elsewhere in the community or anything more serious than that? The other question is, as we go into the colder months, what does this report tell us about what we're going to do and maybe what processes we may be modifying going forward?
So as far as the police question goes, from the dispatch list that I had access to in making this report, a number of them that I don't remember there being anything that one would consider, high-level felony stuff. There were a lot of suspicious conditions. There were some, I remember there's at least one where the codes were explained to me because they're not particularly verbose. But one of them was a citizen assist where somebody in the camp was flagging down an officer to ask them questions. And then there have been several opportunities for our officers to go in, either investigating a theft or because there's been a report of a fight or something in the camp. It looks like in many cases, those don't result in case numbers being generated, which case numbers being generated, as I understand it, and I'm not a police officer, but as I understand it, case numbers get generated when it turns into something that's being investigated as a potential crime. And so a lot of these are, they went out and checked on somebody and either there was nothing actionable there or it turned out that there was nothing there at all and they went away. But it's a mixed bag. I don't have the exact, how, the breakdown of it with me, but I'd say if you get a sense of it, if you were thinking about like some of our apartment complexes in town, or some of our lower income housing, the sorts of calls you would find to neighborhoods like that are kind of, in general, the same sort of feel, if that's helpful at all. And then I've already forgotten the second part of the question.
The second part of the first one was, do we know of anyone associated with the sites that's been involved in any kind of disturbances or any serious action elsewhere? Arrests maybe, or?
I know, I know of at least one who was trespassed from one of the sites and then got to be arrested for going back to that site. I wouldn't be surprised if there were others who, I'm guessing that there have probably been other things. I do not know. The list I got did not include the names of the people. It was just what the issue was they were dispatched for. So I don't have that information now, but I imagine the police department will.
And if you look at the Highway 99 report, there's one individual that had outstanding warrants, and that's what they document there on the last point was the number of individuals participating in criminal justice since entering the shelter site. If they have an outstanding warrant or some issue that they need to resolve, Carry It Forward works with them to get them into the process to start taking care of that.
Councilor Dreher.
Actually, I think Councilor Urban stuck his hand out first.
I've been sticking my hand up a lot. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. I just want to point out, when you look at Highway 99, their number of calls for service: police, 2, EMS fire, 1, and then the other and that's where there is support. And from Carry It Forward staff have told me there feels like a sense of community there. There are staff on site who help them move on with their lives. And then at the other designated camping sites where there is no staff support, police 38 visits, EMS fire 9. And I don't see the number of times public works city staff have gone out there or had to deal with calls about this. Underscoring that we spend a lot of time as a city dealing with the symptoms and people experiencing homelessness. It's not easily measured, but I know public works staff are not hired initially. They're not like, yeah, I'm going to be a public works employee and then go deal with people experiencing homelessness all the time. I want to go build things and do what was actually in the job description. And my other concern as far as what is the state and the federal government doing to help us, we are a small city with a very small budget, do to address these complex issues. When it does, it drains a lot of our resources that you don't see here. I'm just calling that out. And then concerningly, the Highway 99 site, we don't know what's the source of funding for that sustainably moving on when we see the successes there and the level of stability people at that site can achieve. That's just out there for.
Counselor Dreher brought up something that I've been meaning to ask for. I would love if we could get a breakdown of, as best we can, the expenses that are spent at each location. I know we've never really done that. I mean, I've seen them throughout the budget, you know, this much for bucks, but it's not listed under any kind of camp breakdown. And so I think that would be helpful for us to see like how it all comes together, what it's actually costing the community. Also, I wanted to circle back with something I haven't talked to you about since we spoke last, Mr. Boone, was when I went out to the North Douglas site on a report that they had a swimming pool and a slip and slide, and I heard all that. So I was like, that can't be true. So I went out and found that they did indeed have that big pool out there. And then we realized it was for water storage for fighting wildland fires. And I was wanting to know if you circled back, find out where that belonged. I know what you had heard, and it's very unusual. I've never heard of anything like that. So if you can.
It turns out this brand is available at Tractor Supply. It had no markings or anything that implied that it belonged to any forest fire outfit. So the person who so what happened after we talked? I went out there to see what was going on. It was a 2.5 foot high a portable water tank, effectively, that you can fold out, canvas sides. And firefighters often use these to, the fire truck can come along, the tanker can come, dump water into it and run back for more, while the water then in that portable pond effectively gets used to pump out and put water on the fire. They're also apparently used in agricultural situations that I don't know anything about. I've never lived on a big farm. But when I went out there to ask, I came out and I said, so do you happen to know whose pool thing this is? The fellow I was talking to, he was a little hesitant to tell me, but then I hear from behind someone coming along and say, oh, that's mine, that's mine. And she explained to me that her husband had been a firefighter, and that they had this thing in storage. It was brand new. They had it in storage for a long time. He'd gotten it while he was a firefighter. Apparently their outfit had closed down. And I got the sense, I don't know if he said this directly, but I kind of got the idea that either he had gotten it while he was a firefighter, or when they closed down, he ended up with it. I don't know exactly the details on it. He was out of town, and they didn't want it. They thought it would be a cool thing for the people to be able to cool down when the temperatures were really high, to have that thing there. And so they set it up, and they hadn't considered the optics of it, the cost of the water and that sort of thing. So they filled it up. I explained to them they can't have it there. We drained the pool thing, and it sat out for another day or so to dry, and then they took it down and put it away. So it's not there anymore.
I'm glad to hear that, because I know, like, it worried me, because I know if you set up a swimming pool in your front yard and if, God forbid, somebody drowns, your insurance won't cover you. And so that was a little scary for the city's liability. And so I'm glad that's taken care of. And then also you shared something about the meters, because we were concerned, because when we got there were 2 garden hoses and they were running full blast, and you have a solution for that.
So today, I believe today, Public Works has installed or is about to install
Yeah, so Mayor, we received electronic, they call it an ally meter by Census. And it was installed this morning, and on Wednesday, their staff from Ferguson is going to come down and work with Jessica in our office on the operation of this meter. What can happen is she can turn it on and she can turn it off from her computer. And also there is what they call a drastic drip mode, so that it's not 100% closed. So if on weekends when we can't turn it on and off, it can be put into a drastic reduced mode, so it won't operate a sprinkler, it won't do what's being taken place now. So thankful to Ferguson, this meter was not available, and they grabbed this one out of their demo package that they use to go around and promote these meters. So hopefully Wednesday we'll have it operational, and we'll be able to, depending on the direction from the city manager, how the citizens live there will be able to access and use the water unlimited amounts, so that we can stop the waste that's taking place.
Thank you. Councilor Irvin?
Thank you. Mayor, I noticed reference to the groups that community carry it forward is working with. One of them was listed as South Lane Behavioral Health. Is that a synonymous or another name for South Lane Mental Health? It's a separate outfit out of Cottage Grove?
I believe so, or, yeah, I'm not sure where that's out of, but yeah. I don't believe that's mental. It might be mental health, and they just put the wrong word in. It is. It's definitely mental health. So it's they put the wrong, not behavior.
Okay.
That's what I was thinking.
Councilor Mary Day?
Yes, we hear the public's frustration with homelessness. I'm sure that extends to the unhoused as well, that they can't find those that would be willing to or able to afford a reasonable rent would be happy to move in out of doors. I've talked briefly with Councilor Irvin, and we discussed it at agenda setting about having another listening session from the public, and not sure exactly how that would format out, but where people can come and express their ideas and their concerns. And I know it won't probably do much good if we just want to rant at each other, but maybe we could have a room where you could go and just rant and get it off your system and then come willing to sit down. I'm not sure the exact format, but I sense the real need for us to talk again as a community about our unhoused situation and what we can do, what is working. I think we have to admit that we're not seeing homeless everywhere, that our parks are being basically respected by providing the sleeping sites, that we have been able to declare off limits for a number of areas successfully. So there has been some glimmer of hope there for our community at large. I know several business owners who expressed their relief not having people in Trailhead Park, so for instance. And anyway, we need to get together and talk. If other counselors would be more than welcome to join. If we get more than four or more, we need to make it a public meeting notice and whatnot, but that's fine. But we need to find a facilitator people can agree to follow, because I did go to a public meeting that was advertised recently at the library, and there was quite a bit of interrupting each other and not much real discussion able to take place, even apparently from people that seem to agree with each other, just because nobody was really in charge of the meeting. So finding a facilitator that could work with us to help us so that we can talk civilly and come to some ways to move forward here would be very welcome. And I'm not sure exactly how to propose moving forward, but I do want to put that out there as a desire. So how can we do that?
As we discussed on Friday, I think most of the council will be wanting to be part of that. So I think there's not going to be any way without noticing the meeting. I can't imagine that we all wouldn't want to be part of that conversation. So with that, we do have a couple of people here that signed up to speak on this topic. Thank you, Mr. Boone. Jeff Roeder, did I say that right? Roeder?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Yeah, my name is Jeff Roeder. Thank you for the opportunity to get up and address you guys. My wife Karen and I moved to Cottage Grove in 1997. Fell in love with the town. It's a great town. And I think that the city has done a lot of great things. We got some special things going on here in Cottage Grove. And there's no sense me getting too much into that, but a lot of towns would really love to have what we have going on here. It really is special. Bohemia Park and music in the park, things like that. You just don't see that. And I've been around this country, traveled around, worked all over. But I am concerned, and as I know that you guys are, about the situation that we have going on here. And it's not, I would not say that I'm a callous person by any means. I get in the trenches with the homeless, and I work in Eugene, and I know a good number of them up and down the railroad tracks. Some guys were camping out there for 5 to 7 years. I knew of one that died there, and I think his brother may be gone now. So I do have a heart for them, but I also have a heart for our community. I have a heart for our children. And I think we've dodged a bullet here so far. I really do. We've dodged a bullet. And I won't get into too many details, but just one, for instance, over here this summer, I was riding my bike around town and drove by the Bell Tower Park just down the street here across from the Accent Hill. And there was he was a huge young man. He looked like an all-star wrestler. He was big. And he was ranting and raving and carrying on, cussing and screaming. There was a couple of Jehovah's Witness ladies, elderly ladies, trying to set up a little thing with their tracts or whatever it is that they give them. And I'm going, this is not good. So I ride over and I tell the dispatch, and I went straight back to see what was going, kind of monitor it a little bit. And the poor ladies were gone. They didn't feel safe. You know, that's just one instance, and I've seen it happen over at the library. You know, and God bless our police. They do a great job. They do. They're good. And, you know, sometimes I think that we really put a lot of excess on them because of our decisions. And I would really, I think, would really urge you guys to really take it seriously if you're going to meet with the public, because there's a lot of anger out there in the community. In my little neighborhood, my block, had a block party on Saturday night, and thank you, Cottage Grove, for providing some barricades so we could block off the street. And I wasn't the initiator of it, but it was to start a neighborhood watch because of theft and the things that are going on. And so there's a lot of angry people. There's a lot of people concerned about their children, and you know what, I care about the homeless. I really do. On one hand, on the other hand, that's a personal level. But as far as the city goes, you owe it to your citizens to keep a safe place for them, a place that they don't have to worry about their children going out and playing or just going for a walk or whatever. And I know it's difficult. We're living in some really dark, difficult days. I understand that. There's a lot of darkness in the land. But we've really got to be vigilant, and I think we really need to think these things through And, you know, some people's behaviors will not change, you know, unless they're dealt a hand that causes them to change. You know, if you read about the parable of the prodigal son, you know, this young man basically ended up probably with an addiction, broke, hungry, and it was at that point where he decided, well, you know what, things were better at home. I'd go back home, I could work for dad. I mean, that's the gist of that. And so people can change. I know there's a lot of mental health issues, and I get that. But really, we need to correct the course we're headed, and we've dodged some bullets here. I really do believe that.
Thank you.
You know, so thank you.
Mr. Bark?
I don't know if I can do a better job than what he just said, but my name's Mike Bork. I live at 310 North Douglas. Very familiar with the North Douglas site because I live there or close to it. The biggest thing that concerns me a little bit is just we don't have a true number of what our unhoused is here. It seems to vary for, you know, from a low of 40 2 years ago to a high of 400. I'm sure we're somewhere in between that. I don't know where we're at. And I know we don't know where it's at because, you know, you look at the reports and, you know, 99, it said 26 we started with. They say 31, but if you actually add it up, it's down to 25 because we lost 6 and added 5, so it's actually 25 there. And I'm just looking at what we pay there, and I'm not sure what the number is. I've heard $200,000 or something like that for what we're doing there. And I haven't seen what progression and how many people we've actually helped there. And I'm all for helping people if they want to be helped. And that's what we got to focus on. But the other part, we need to figure out how we can separate or go and make it a little bit harder for them or whatever, just so they can live in society, basically. But the numbers just haven't jived. And, you know, you look at the two sites and they say 35. There's more than 35 of those two sites. Yeah, granted, you know, there's a lot of sites, and most of them take 2 or 3 sites themselves. They'll have one for their tent, one for storage, and one for cooking. And we're looking at, I know North Douglas, you know, with the water you had there, the gray water that's going to be there, that is going to be a liability to you fairly quickly. And there hasn't been anything out there to solve that problem. Talking about, this is a section of land that could have been a profitable land for the city, where it could have been turned into housing or something like that. But the city went out and bought it for about $280,000 and tore it down. You got about a $500,000 investment there to house 30 people. So, you know, when you look at a taxpayer and we're funding, you know, everything, that was not a good investment. And you guys should have looked at that. Plus, you put it in a residential area. And you talk about most of the people there that have kids now, they won't let their kids out there because of what's going on. You don't live there. You don't hear, you've heard it screaming and yelling. And that's their First Amendment right. I've been told that by the police. They can go out there and cuss all they want. And there's not anything that we can do about it. But you brought it into a residential area with kids where the buses go by and all that. And just last night, there's a guy sleeping right there on the street, right in North Douglas. I don't know if there was not enough places for him, but he was out there sleeping right next to the road. One of these days, somebody's going to hit him. I mean, it's just one of those things. And, you know, they constantly move the barriers. They constantly tear down the fences. So you could try to do things, but it's just not going to quite work until you really put some standards in there. And I just, you know, I'm all for if we want to put it around, let's buy buy it. I know Holly Road has a lot up there. We can put it up there and see what those people say. And I can guarantee you, you'll be hearing more than what you just heard, from me. So I would just like to commend you to look at, I'm all for, we need to get together and come to some sort of agreement. But right now you have a lot of people that are not very happy and they're not safe. And the police reports don't show half of what's going on out there. They won't, although all the, just look at the grocery carts that are out there. The police won't come and get them. Stores don't want them back because they're biohazard. So that's just a cost that we're all incurring. Those carts aren't cheap. So it's just part of us losing money at the register every day. So I just want to let you be aware. I'd love to make some sort of appeasement out there, but we need to get tough on some of these people too. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Item D, information regarding the Central Lane County flood map update. Staff report by Mr. Mongan.
Thank you again, Mayor, Council. In early May of this year, I presented to Council that on April 19th, the city filed an appeal during the 90-day appeal period for the proposed preliminary flood maps for Cottage Grove area. Following that, on June 8th, Mayor received a letter from FEMA acknowledging the receipt of that appeal document, and included this language that FEMA will evaluate the issues raised in the reference correspondence and submitted data. If additional data or information are required to resolve the submittal, FEMA will be in touch. If warranted, FEMA will revise the preliminary FIRM and FIS map. So FIRM is flood rate insurance map, and FIS is flood insurance study, report, and send revised copies to the city for review. Until this submittal is resolved, FEMA will not issue a letter of final determination. Therefore, the processing of the final or the preliminary FIRM to final FIRM will be delayed. So what that means, is we're not, as of right now, we're not going to get the same maps that I discussed back in May that have been available for about a year and a half for consideration. So that's really good news. Following that letter on June 8th, I had a conference call or a Zoom meeting with the consultants for FEMA and FEMA to discuss what we can expect. And their comments were, I just have some chicken scratch notes here, so pardon me, that between our comments and new data being supplied by the Army Corps of Engineers, we will be getting new preliminary maps that will be complete for review in approximately 18 months. At that time, there will be an additional 30-day review period, similar to the 90 that we had with the process that was completed in April. So I'm pretty optimistic, though, that the new data will really benefit the city of Cottage Grove and its residents, in that it's my understanding from the anecdotal comments regarding the Army Corps data that most of the water coming out of the dams will stay in channel, meaning that not over bank, which is where you get your 100-year floodplain and things like that. So the proposed 710 structures that would have been added to the floodplain hopefully will be a much, much, much smaller number, which is really good for the community. I'd also add that the city contracts me to do the floodplain management for Crestwell. They received similar information based on the work that I did with some citizens there. So that's exciting. The other cities that are involved in this flood map update, Eugene and Springfield, and then unincorporated Lane County, either didn't file an appeal or didn't file anything that changed anything. So they're on the same path to get the maps that they were going to get. Now, I would say that for Eugene, they were actually going to lose some structures. So it's not terrible, but at the same time, they're also getting sections of town like Pearl Street that's going to now be in the floodway, which means if they want to change out a catch basin, they have to do a no-rise certification. So that's like $100,000 process. So it's pretty exciting stuff. So I'm hopeful to have a preliminary map within the next 4 to 6 months. That will allow us to kind of have a good idea of what we can expect, and that will allow the development department folks and myself to start working on some of our other long-range planning projects that we've had desired to do for some time. So any questions regarding that?
Before I open this up for questions and everyone sings your praises, I just want to say thank you for this, that it's really nice with everything that we're going through with the city. We could use some good news. So thank you for that. So, Councilor Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mongan. I think let the record show, major snaps. FEMA is reconsidering the map they were drawing. It will save our residents a lot of money. They will never know you did this, but thank you so very much. This is a good example of the work, knowing the intricacies of the system and how you can really effectively advocate. It's my understanding this is like a diamond in the rough. It's very rare for FEMA to actually reconsider a map, and we have had that gem. So thank you so very much for your advocacy and diligence in this.
Thank
you. Councilor Urban.
Yeah, reiterate the appreciation. I've been mulling over this whole scenario, right? And it's pretty troublesome in some ways when you think about it. These are all, and it comes down to models. The methodology of a model then yields a recommendation, then actions are taken based on that. And very rarely is anyone looking at the applicability of the model itself and how accurate it is and what impact. And I'm certainly tempted to just say, yes, let's not cost any more money. But there is a train of thought that says, what if that model is the most accurate? What if that is what's coming? Won't we really want flood insurance in that case? And so I'm left with a desire to understand more about this model and about the new model that's being employed that is based more off of the water staying in the channel. And so I would find that, I think I asked for this on a Monday. With that context, I think it would help us in beyond this context, beyond the floodplain discussion, but anywhere where models are being used to advocate for policy and decision making, find it helpful to go through your process and understand why you're confident in a different model rather than this one, so that we can all wind up with a result that not only is in our favor financially, but doesn't put us in any additional risk.
Mayor, Councilor Urban. So I did some thinking about this over the weekend, and thinking back to my conversations that I've had with the consultant team from FEMA, and the modeling that was used, and these are things that you could Google if you find time, but there's a methodology, it's called HEC-RAS modeling, and there's a HEC-RAS 2 now. As with all things computer driven, it's constantly updated and things like that. But all of the model that created that preliminary map that they've now put to the side and have gone back to the drawing board was a 1D model. The new model they're not feeling as confident in using that system anymore. They're going to go to the 2D, which is a little bit more spot specific. And so it should bring a higher level of accuracy. Typically, they don't use a lot of 2D, is my understanding, because it's time consuming and expensive. And more the 2D is used by private parties that are trying to say, you did it wrong, FEMA. So I'm encouraged by that, just that it will add extra layers of data to the assumptions that are made to make the recommendations, right? So that piece that you were talking about, like whether or not that one was accurate or the next one's going to be more or less accurate. I just feel that there's an extra level of confidence that they almost seem to show in the discussion that we had on the 9th during that Zoom conference call. Just that they're wanting to be sure. Because I really did hammer home 710 additional dwellings, structures. That's devastating. Right now, in my annual report to FEMA, because we're a CRS Class 6 community, I have to report how many structures are in the floodplain. We have 76. You know, that's 700%. Is that right? 1,000% increase? What is that? It's a ton, right? So I think that really kind of stuck with them. That, you know, it can't just be a number that's spit out of a computer. It needs to be thought about. And so I think that they heard that, and hopefully that will come down in these next matters.
Councilor Savage.
Thank you so much, Mayor Soulsby. When I was in Washington, D.C., and I briefly touched about this on Friday at agenda session, but I was given the task to talk about how FEMA is represented in the state of Oregon. And I did a lot of research and I heard two things. Huge kudos and thank you to FEMA for helping with our most recent wildfires. And oh my gosh, we need to relook at these maps. And so my little tiny drops in the bucket that you filled are of no comparison, but the research is amazing. And thank you so much for all of the advocacy and due diligence that you've put forward in order to better restructure and redefine. I think of, you know, on my computer and working with Photoshop and you're using like a paint tool. You know, if you're using a brush that's too big, it's yes, you're in the right spot, but it's too big. So let's tighten the brush down and really be diligent and really outline and working with these maps. And that's what I keep envisioning in my head. So thank you so much.
Councilor Merryday.
Just some historical perspective. The Christmas flood of 1964 happened because of a series of events. There was a hard freeze that froze the ground solid. There was a huge snow dump, followed by a pineapple express that that brought a lot of rain in addition and caused all the snow to melt. It was not able to absorb, and we had water shooting over the dam and some flooding here for the first time really, and since they built the dams. And it's not going to show up on any model. So, you know, it's those freak conditions that can generate. But I really do appreciate for all the citizens what you've advocated for us here, and that sometimes models are unpredictable. Right?
Mayor, if I might add, when we first received those maps, we sat down and spent quite a bit of time with Mr. Mongan and staff. And really, we looked through old events, even the 64 pictures and everything, and there's places that they're showing we're going to flood in Cottage Grove with a certain amount of water that have never flooded, even 64 and before that. So that really, and me personally, just kind of felt like, I don't know if these really reflect what truly is going to take place. And I would throw also another item that Councilor Merriday that would cause flooding even is our forest practices back then. There was a lot of land that was just basically log everything. And because our forests were in that condition back at that time, there's not a lot of retention in the canopy. There's a lot of moisture that gets retained in those trees at various different stages. It gets absorbed. When you don't have any, when you receive that type of water and it's just pelted on the ground with no cover, it just immediately flash floods down. So there's a lot of different circumstances today that don't exist and is not allowed to exist as there was back in those days. So, I mean, I'm glad that we took the time to kind of ferret out our concerns that we don't think they're accurate. And it was Eric's thought process and who he engaged and really the great work that he did that set them back. So, Councilor Irvin, we certainly can't predict everything. I mean, you look at some of the crazy things that are happening around the world and how much water it gets dumped. I mean, 15 inches of rain in 24 hours. Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to survive that, no matter what our map shows. So, but I think in general, over the last 100 years, in the historical perspective that we looked at, it's like this is not what's going to take place. So, I'm glad and thankful they're taking another look.
Councilor Irvin.
One more anecdote. In the 12-something years I've been here now, our East Van Buren would flood frequently. We would do the proverbial fishing pole in the street, sandbag the house, try to pump it out. And then you guys ran a little robot down the storm drain, and even stronger rain events, it hasn't flooded anymore. So it just also goes to the importance of, and what we're talking about, our streets and the maintenance thereof, the infrastructure, the things that we can do to really mitigate even non-major flood events that do affect the residents are all the more important to remember and appreciated on the Public Works for doing things like that, keeping up on them.
Thank you, Councilor. And I would just share that, as you know, when you're taking care of 50 miles of road, 46 miles of water pipe, and 40 miles of sewer line, and the storm drainage system, there's a lot of work for essentially 11 people to do all year long. We really work hard to try to do our best, but in that situation there, it was catapulted because we always had this big old puddle of water on Main Street at the Walgreens and the Blockbuster now, Anytime Fitness, and our team worked hard, and we found that, quite frankly, the outfall in the ditch was completely covered with dirt, so there was no place for the water to go. And our team unplugged it, and then the consequences were things start to flow better and drain better. And there's a lot of work, and we work hard to try to fix those things. So we've got a great team.
I agree.
Thank you, Mr. Monken. All right, concerns of council. No one? Councilor Savage.
Thank you so much. As I sat down in my chair this evening, I was handed my LOC Local Focus magazine that I get every so often. As I'm flipping through, I see Cottage Grove, Skeet Park reaches goal for matching grants. So kudos to the two counselors that are working on this. It's being noticed and we're being featured. That's kind of cool. I thought that was really awesome and thought you should know.
Anyone else? No? All right.
To that end, look for a future citywide or targeted city cleanup effort by the Friends of the Cottage Grove Skate Park.
All right. I guess, Mr. Stennett, Councilor Stennett, nothing? Okay. I have a statement to make. We've all been through a lot in the last few years, both personally and in the community. With the homelessness situation came to our town in a big way, and we had to make some changes. We started making decisions
regarding our parks, shelters, overflow camps. And all of a sudden, we received an outpouring of citizen engagement. As soon as we started talking about the 99 site, and then we saw a much greater engagement in citizens when we talked about possibly picking up the Nazarene Church and making that a shelter. The overflow of people that came into City Hall, I hadn't seen it like that, and it stretched out into our foyer and was standing room only out there. They all started coming to the city council meetings, our neighbors, friends, family, citizens. It was a divided vote, both in the community and on council, and there was lots of spirited discussions. People became angry, and we're still dealing with that at our council meetings. They told us that they felt unheard, and that was when I first started hearing rumblings of a recall. I was not surprised when the man that I found out was spearheading it lives on North Douglas, right down the street from one of the overflow camps. When I went to the Oregon Mayors Association for the Mayor's Conference, the recalls were definitely a topic of conversation. It's definitely not just happening here, and it's been going on for a while. I was surprised to hear how many mayors were going through it or had recently went through it themselves. One of the mayors was from Sherwood, and he actually shared with me that there was a recall going on, or had just previously went on, that recalled 2 counselors and the mayor, and that was over the city deciding not to renew a lease on a city-owned property for their beloved YMCA, and that recall was successful. I have not been involved with the recall at all, although I know that there's been those rumors, and it is absolutely untrue. I actually told the city manager that a couple weeks back, or a few weeks back maybe, and asked how I should deal with it. And he advised that I come out with a statement against the recalls, because then that would show that I wasn't involved. I also received several phone calls and emails from a counselor urging me to clarify and come out against, so that we could unite the council now that we're going in for the process of recruitment. And he referred to the citizens that are doing this as misguided on Facebook. And I want you to know this is really uncomfortable for me. I had not planned on speaking about this at all. I don't really think that, unless it's someone that's involved in the recall themselves, that I would have done this. I also was told by another counselor that if I didn't speak to the people behind it, that it would be World War III for me. I felt like that was unwarranted and indefensible, and it was upsetting to me. While I was thinking about this, I did a lot of soul searching on what to say tonight, and so I asked my husband for some advice, and he told me to follow my heart. The only reason I am up here on the dais at all is to serve the citizens. I believe it's improper for the mayor to make a public statement opposing or supporting a recall. I believe in the constitutional right of people to choose their elected officials and to recall, even if it was for me. It's their constitutional right, And in the end, it should always be the constituents that decide. All right. Business from the city manager. Draft personnel manual, staff report by Assistant City Manager, Mr. Boone.
Mayor, council. So as laws and best practices evolve, cities' personnel policies must evolve with them. City County Insurance Services provides a model personnel manual containing recommended policies for municipalities in Oregon. Over the last several months, staff has been analyzing the most current version of the CIS manual to ensure that it meets the city's needs and making modifications to make it more relevant and applicable to the city of Cottage Grove in particular. That process is now complete. At this time, staff is requesting that council review the manual and approve it, I should say that review the draft manual and approve its presentation to the city's bargaining units for their review. Once that process is complete, the document will return to council for final approval and adoption. Our recommendation is that council review the draft personnel manual and approve its presentation to the city's bargaining units.
Councilor Flack.
Well, kind of funny, reading through this, our personnel management manual, easy for me to say, is not 77 pages long. I did read every part of this, and actually I can't imagine any potential situation that's not covered in this manual. So well done. It's definitely quite a read. I did have a question about the XOX, I think it was, or was it OXO? I don't remember which.
XOX.
And, for page numbers. And as Assistant City Manager Boone acknowledges that in formatting it may change page numbers, and so they want to get that formalized before actually putting the numbers in. So in case anybody looked through that and was wondering, that was that. But no, I think well done. What a lot of work this is. I hope we don't have to do it again soon.
Thank you, Councilor, but I also want to redirect a huge portion of those thanks, if not all of them, to Mandy, who has done the lion's share, and also maybe a couple of jackals and a crow on this.
Councilor Savage.
Thank you so much, Mayor Solsby. I'm a huge advocate for mindfulness and just being aware of self and checking ourselves and our own mental health. Often in handbooks, you'll find that there's a session or two of counseling provided on one topic X amount of times. I didn't see anything like that in here. Is that something that the city offers, or is that something that the city could potentially offer? Maybe I missed it. Maybe it is.
We do have, and they're called the employee assistance programs, and we actually have two. And they provide, I think, 4 sessions?
Yeah, and they are cited in the handbook.
Then I just missed it. Thank you for clarifying.
I guess I'll make a motion then. I move that the draft personnel manual be approved and presented to the city's bargaining units.
Second.
We have a motion with a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Boone. Report from the city manager.
The one item I wanted to report tonight is that this is Chief Groth's last meeting, but because he fell ill over the weekend, last meeting was his last meeting. But do want to recognize him for the work that he's done and helped us through the process. He will be leaving us on the 30th of this month, so on Wednesday. And will be pulling his trailer away from his gated community and going back to Lapine. But we will continue to have him on as a mentor for the new chief. And we'll take the administrative liberty and invite you to a barbecue on Wednesday at 5:30. Hopefully he will be well. He's supposed to come in tomorrow. And if you want to show up here at City Hall, rain or shine, probably, hopefully not raining, but that'll get over with by Wednesday maybe. But we'll have a small barbecue here in appreciation for him and his service as he goes back to spend more time with his family in retirement. So we're very pleased with that. We have made the announcement on the police chief, and if anybody is living under a rock and hasn't heard it yet, but we do have a police chief that is going to start on September 11th. 9/11, he'll be starting as our new police chief, Corey Chase. He's been an officer with Prineville and Redmond, and is currently the assistant chief with the Port of Portland, working there and in that administrative role. So we're excited by that opportunity. He's excited to come, and he's had a number of media representatives contact him today, and so there may be, if we stay up late enough, we'll maybe be able to see or hear him on the TV stations as he's been interviewed and talked to with them. I talked a little bit Friday on the Armory numbers, and the Armory usage is increasing dramatically as in previous years. In 21, 22, from July to August, it was $230. 22, 23, it was $2,020. This year so far, it's $3,300 of rentals going on, and we continue to see that increase. I think there's 85 reservations already, and I think we had somebody else come in today or Friday. So since that report, so we'll continue to see that grow and develop as well.
Councilor Mary Day.
During the meet and greet, one of the candidates was actually born in Cottage Grove, I believe, and then moved away due to family situations.
Yes.
And was that our current chief or the other candidate?
It's the other one. Huh? It was the other one.
It was the other one that was born here. Although our chief actually grew up in the Springfield, McKenzie River area and Camp Creek and stuff. So he's a local as well in that way, and has been in the area. So.
Yeah, I knew there was a local connection, but the Facebook chatter was like, "Oh, from Portland." I was like, "No, actually from kind of around here."
Yeah, and he's in Portland, but he's not working for Portland with the thousands of police officers. He's working with an agency that's representing 10,000 people, basically. The airport and the port equipment and the employees are his citizens. And all of the traffic that runs through those things are like our freeway traffic. So it's they have a department of 61, but it's there's a lot of comparable stuff with the Port of Portland and here. But his services in Prineville and Redmond are dramatically helpful for what he's going to need to be doing as well. So 22 years of experience in law enforcement, and he's still got years left in him. He's not eligible for retirement yet. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, no city attorney, so we are adjourned.
5:30.
I think that's right. I think that's right. I know, I've got it. Stuff. Thank you so much. See you guys.
That means you appear that someone else is going to say. All the